Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 18, 2012 meeting of the Edina City Council and the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please, Ms. Megan.
Member Bennett?
Here.
Member Brendel?
Here.
Member Sprague?
Here.
Member Swenson?
Here.
Mayor Hovland?
Here. The next portion of the agenda is the approval of the meeting agenda, and I would request that the council consider reversing sections 4 and 5 so we can handle special recognitions and presentations before we get into the consent agenda, because I think at least one of the items on the consent agenda that's going to be removed is going to require some discussion on the part of the council. So is there a motion to modify the meeting agenda accordingly? Okay, we got a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And then we will go to special recognitions and presentations. And the first one we have this evening has kind of a dual function. We got a guy sitting in the front row that's served us unbelievably well for almost 36 years, and we're going to do a resolution of appreciation tonight for John Caprios. Ask him to come up and say a few words, and then we're going to also I think the council will pass this, frankly, designating December 27th as John Caprios Day in Edina, but let me just sneak preview that. So let me read the resolution of appreciation, John, and why don't you come on up to the podium. Resolution of appreciation for John Caprios. Whereas Mr. John Caprios began employment with the City of Edina on December 22nd, 1977. And whereas John Caprios has served the City of Edina as a Recreation Supervisor, Assistant Park and Recreation Director, and Director of Parks and Recreation. And whereas John Caprios has served the City of Edina with honor and faithful commitment for 35 years, almost 36, I think, as I said before. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Edina that the City Council wishes to express its sincere gratitude and appreciation to Mr. John Caprios for 35 years of distinguished public service to the City of Edina, and be it further resolved to honor John Caprios for his 35 years of dedication to the City of Edina. The City Council declares Thursday, December 27, 2012 to be John Caprios Day in the City of Edina to recognize his career of public service. Is there a unanimous motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, John, well, congratulations.
Snuggle up, guys. Just don't have as much room tonight. I just punch. Thanks, guys. 1, 2, 3. John, big smile. And one more. There, thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Now, we're going to have you say a few words.
Sure.
I think but people on the council may wish to say a few things about you as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, this wasn't on the agenda. Thank you very much for this recognition. Not too many folks can stand before you and say that they spent their entire professional career with the same company. It's been honestly an honor and my privilege to serve the City of Edina, where the folks are just so passionate about their parks. I still think I get the best job at City Hall. Thank you so much for this recognition. I really appreciate it.
John, I know they did a wonderful article about you last week, and I think Lisa Kansky's back here. Lisa, thanks for doing such a wonderful job in the Sun newspaper, recognizing John's years of service. I know I was quoted in there saying, to me, you are the quintessential public servant. all those years of service, meeting here, those endless council meetings, many of those meetings we've been part of. You've always been a superb professional, a consummate professional, giving it all to the city of Edina, always looking out for what's best for the entire town. It's just incredible. Not just your department, but what makes Edina a better place to live. So thank you so much for all those years of service. Anyone, Ann?
You know, it's, having spent 8 years here, I'll say that department heads, we've thrown things at them, and sometimes they'll say, well, gee, I don't know if we've got time or the money or whatever. And every time we give you a new challenge, you get this big grin on your face, and you say, yeah, I think we can take that on, and you do. So of everyone that I've interacted with here in 8 years, you are the go-to-it man, so we're going to miss you a lot. But I hear you have a good replacement.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mary?
Well, a huge thank you on my own behalf, because I stand really on both sides of this dice. I get to experience the reception of Edina Park and Rec throughout the Twin Cities as a member of Sousa Band. When we play, Sousa Band plays on the average of a dozen concerts a summer in the neighboring communities. And it's a reciprocal situation where we'll play in St. Paul at Como Park. The band from that area plays at Centennial Lakes and or Edinburgh Park. So we, the park departments in the cities work together to provide arts and entertainment, and that is the network that Sousa Band is privileged to be part of. And when we announce that we're sponsored by City of Edina Park and Recreation, the letters come in and thanking the city for the participation in the arts. So thanks for your vision and continued support. We look for that support to go on and on. But truly, on both sides, I mean, this park department is very easy to support, very easy to be proud of. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Bennett?
Just 4 words. Thank you for your enthusiasm, your dedication, your professionalism, and your stewardship. You have been a wonderful gift to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Frey?
Just want to say it's been an honor working with you, and I think you carry an attitude not only of service but of partnership with your colleagues up here and in your staff, and also with the public at large. And I think that comes out in everything you do. And also that, of course, your legacy will live on long past your days of service in this park board system and in the culture that you've developed in your own department. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And coincidentally, there's a little party for you, I think, the same day that it is John Keprios Day in Edina, so that'll be a nice little event to take part in. So, all right, next, Chief Long, we have, are you handling the Memorial Blood Center Badges of Blood Drive Award as well? Kevin Rafael? Okay, thanks, Kevin. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we're going to receive an award from the Memorial Blood Center called the Battle of the Badges. We first noticed a need for the blood donation in November 2000 during the first door bank robbery, and Officer Mike Blood was wounded very tragically. The community came out, we filled the council chambers. It was a record blood drive. When the community filled the council chambers, Memorial Blood Center says that's the largest drive they've had in a short amount of time. We recognized that need. Mike Blood since has become a spokesperson for the Blood Center. He has gone back and done a lot of promotions for them. But this Battle of the Badges program was started by them and involving police and fire departments. So kind of coupled with the fact that Mike is their spokesperson, we decided to partner with them on that. Last year, the Edina Police Department, in cooperation with them, received what they call the Rookie Award, which was the first time startup agency for the most blood donors. Again, we fill this council chambers now for the blood drive, and so this year we took the first place award in the metro area for the most number of blood donors. Again, we involve the community. We take our original blood drive that was just for city employees and rolled it out to the community. And the last thing I wanted to mention was Terry Wilson from our HR department, who has been very instrumental with the sign up and very helpful on that. She couldn't make it tonight, but I just wanted to recognize her. So let me introduce Rachel Pavla from Memorial Blood Center.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hi, thank
Rachel,
you so-
welcome.
Thanks for having me. I really just want to thank the police department and the community for everything that they do for us. We do the Battle of the Badges in August, which the summer is a very hard time to collect blood as people are out at their cabins and doing a lot of different things. So it's really a great thing to have the Battle of the Badges. Edina alone had 75 people come out, roll up their sleeve, and donate blood for our local community. So they're helping people like Mike Blood and other people in the community that really need it to help our local hospital. So thanks to them for everything that they do for us. And we're looking forward to next year and bigger and better.
All right, looks like you've got an award in
I
your
do.
hand there that you want to
And I
present.
don't want to drop it, so I'd love
All
to
right, let
hand
me
it out.
walk down there. We'll
Just slide it just a little bit more that way. Keep going that way. Okay, looks good. Okay, thanks for your smile, Rachel. One more. Okay, really, one more? Perfect, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, members of the community, police department. Tonight is a good night. It's when we get to give out awards. It seems in law enforcement, when somebody does something right, we all gather and we all get grouped together for doing the good things. When something goes bad, we are often grouped together for the bad things also. So it's nice to present something positive. And one of the things that is unique about law enforcement is we support one another. And in a time right now when we're seeing so much violence in the community, I think it's outstanding that all of these officers are showing up to support the community and our officers as a whole. So I want to thank them for coming in. I want to invite up Officer Brandon Kuski, if he would step up. Brandon is receiving the departmental commendation. This is something that we don't give out very often. Some years we don't have any, some years we have 2 or 3, but it takes some unique police work to do this. So I'm just going to read the award that we wrote for Brandon and then present him with his new badge. In March of 2010, Officer Brandon Kuski investigated a stalking report involving an 18-year-old female victim at Southdale. Officer Kuski diligently pursued leads, researched options, consulted with attorneys, and pushed through roadblocks and red tape to get the suspect charged and convicted. Officer Kuski, while working on the Flex team, took ownership of the stalking complaint, found the suspect had a previous stalking conviction, and obtained a warrant for a GPS to establish a stalking pattern. Through the use of the GPS for vehicle tracking and CCTV at Southdale, Kuski captured the suspect on video stalking the victim. After consulting with the county attorney, Kuski arrested the suspect. However, pre-charging investigation review believed that there was a lack of probable cause and the case was not submitted. Undeterred, Officer Kuski went to the Detective Division to personally present his case. Successful in his detailed presentation, the case was accepted and charged through Hennepin County. In our arduous court trial, Kuski skillfully laid out his case and articulated the statutory elements, which resulted in a guilty verdict from the jury. The prosecutor had high praise for the professional job Kuski did on this case and his testimony. Officer Kuski went above and beyond to fight for the safety of a victim. He exemplifies the high level of dedication and professionalism we aspire to in the City of Edina. Therefore, the City of Edina thanks Officer Brandon Kuski and awards him this Edina Police Department commendation. Congratulations.
Thank you. I first want to thank my partner at the time, Officer Joel Moore, whether it was assisting with surveillance or watching my back while we changed out the battery on the GPS tracking device. He was of great assistance during this case. Those of us that choose the police profession do so to serve the community, and it's an honor to serve in Edina. Thank you very much for the recognition.
One more. Thank you.
Why don't you tell folks about your recent promotion too? For the Coast Guard? For the Coast Guard. Yeah, I was recently promoted to chief in the Coast Guard, so exciting times in the future.
Your Honor, I moved too slow when you were moving forward with approval of tonight's meeting agenda. There was an additional item that staff would like the council to consider putting on consent, but would consent to you putting it in open meeting as well. We've received a grant from the Twins Community Fund of $25,000 for some work to be completed at Garden Park. It's necessary for the council to act on this item tonight because we have to act and reply to the Twins Community Fund by January 4th, which is prior to the council's next scheduled meeting. There is an item that's in front of you tonight. It was not prepared. We didn't get notice of this prior to make our deadlines for the packet for tonight. That's why it's coming to you in this manner.
All right, I'm wondering if we could amend the resolution 2012-180 accepting various donations. Would it fall into that category?
No,
Or do you want to handle
normally
it as a separate matter?
we need a separate action from the council.
We also haven't had an opportunity to pull anything from the consent agenda, so since we haven't had that opportunity, can't we add and pull?
Yes, because it's your agenda.
Okay.
Normally, we would add this as an item. You would take an action to add it as an official item to the agenda, but
How
I'll
about I'll add it as P on the agenda
Okay.
for the consent agenda?
Right.
Do you want to speak to it then? Do you need to speak to it?
I don't need to speak to it any more than I just did unless you require more information to act on
I
the
don't
item.
require any more, so I will let anyone else pull it that wants to.
All right, so the action requested is to accept a $25,000 Minnesota Twins Community
Here,
Fund
it's
grant
right here.
for the addition of batting cages at Garden Park?
That's correct.
All right. And we'll add that as item P to the consent agenda on motion if we get a second.
I'll second.
All right. And discussion in terms of amending the consent agenda to add item P. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And then let's go back to the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Member Bennett.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I would like to remove 4D. I would like to remove 4H, and those are the two items. Thank you.
And can I
Yes,
request
member
4C?
Swenson. 4C, and I wanted to remove 4J, which actually now I think becomes 5. So it's 5, C, D, H, and J. Anyone else? Okay. With the exception of 5, C, D, H, and J, is there a motion to adopt the balance of the consent agenda,
So
A
moved.
through P?
Second.
All right, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Now we go to the traffic safety report, which is 5C, September 5th, 2012.
The
Member
only
Swenson.
thing I just wanted to comment on was on page 9 in the discussion on the ring road that goes behind Lund's parking lot, there was a issue on that sign behind it. I had a request from a member of the Lanterns community in that building right there. What would it take to put a speed bump in? And I said I wasn't really sure because that road had truck traffic and other things, and it was a ring road, but I did know that we had a portable speed bump. And is that something that we can try on a road like that, or it can't really be used on a road like that?
Yeah, Councilmember Swenson and Council, on that particular roadway, that's a designated municipal state aid roadway, so we can't do any vertical type of traffic calming on it. What we are suggesting internally is to take a look at it after we do our France Avenue pedestrian improvements and see if we can apply some of those techniques at that intersection to help the safety of pedestrians crossing at that location.
Perfect. Well, I promised him I would bring it up, so I would move this matter.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We adopt 5C. Discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. Also, I don't, even if that were not a municipal state aid road, am I correct in understanding that that wouldn't meet the new policy for the temporary speed bump because that's only for during construction?
That's correct. That the new policy that I would apply is that it would have to be caused by construction on adjacent roadways or nearby roadways.
Not for unilateral street calming?
Right. That's
Okay.
correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further comment, inquiry? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Carried. And then 5D is the traffic safety report on November 7. Member Bennett.
Yes, thank you. There are two parts of this that I would like a little further discussion or explanation of. The one was regarding the crosswalks on Interlochen. I believe that the request is B5, if I have that correct, Director Houle. And then also would like a brief explanation and discussion about the status of, was an item that had been deferred to later date.
Oh, the 61st Street and Kellogg.
Yes, exactly.
Stop sign.
I'm looking for that part, the number, but yes, those are the two items.
Page 9 is Interlochen.
Okay, thank you.
And then I also, why don't we, into that mix, put the discussion about 55th Street West and Xerxes. Having spent quite a bit of time over there recently, I thought that was an interesting request, so.
Yep,
And-
the two that you're referring to is number 5 and number 6. One's on page 9. The write-up on number 5 is on page 9, and that's requesting a crosswalk at Interlochen Boulevard and Cooper Avenue, and one at Interlochen Boulevard and Mirror Lakes Drive. Our current policy for crosswalks, it doesn't meet the warrants for a crosswalk. You need 20 pedestrians or more. What we're suggesting is that we hold off on installing crosswalks because it doesn't meet the warrants, but we are sitting on a petition for a sidewalk in that location. And once we go through that process, I'm not sure what it's going to fall in as far as the prioritizing of sidewalks, but we've done a feasibility study for a sidewalk over there, is that we would incorporate or look at incorporating crosswalks at that time.
My concern about the timing of that solution is that I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg question. If there's a perception that there is no clearly delineated place to cross, some people will cross, but other people will even drive their children to play dates or other things rather than try to cross that roadway. And I appreciate the effort that's going to go into a feasibility study for a sidewalk, but I also know how long that takes. And I know that a crosswalk is a quicker, more time-sensitive solution. So I guess other than, I believe, is it at Vandervork or Oxford that there is a delineated crosswalk? Is there any other crosswalk delineated?
No. Yeah, on Interlochen, there is no other delineated crosswalks, and when we put the crosswalk in at Vandervork, is that we added a sidewalk on the south side between Bedford
Yes.
and Oxford.
And
Or not
I
Bedford,
advocated
Bedford
for
and
that
Lyon.
in part because it would provide pedestrians with a landing space with strollers, wagons, bicycles, and the like to cross. But I still think we need to look at the crosswalk not separately from the sidewalk, but perhaps in advance of when that sidewalk would actually be constructed. I know that the ETC is working on some prioritization, and perhaps that's an avenue or a way to have it be a little advanced before we are going to get to a sidewalk. I understand staff's diligence, but I just know how long it takes to get those
Sure.
done.
Member Swenson.
But the area where it's requested, well, I think it's needed to go across Interlochen is actually, there's a hill and then it's on the downside of a hill. So you might want to put a crosswalk there, but you might want to put it at the top of the hill where Skyline Drive is versus a little bit down the hill where Cooper is. Having lived on Skyline Drive and walked over to Cooper and back, you never crossed at the low part below the top of the hill because no one could see you. So I think we can't just decide it would be a good idea without going further and looking at the right spot and talking about a landing pad and the sidewalk. So while I understand, I agree with you, you don't cross there because it's not safe, so therefore you see no one crossing there. So the pedestrian count really doesn't count. I have a concern about putting it where it's been requested.
Is your concern the same about the requested crossing at Mirror Lakes Drive? Where there is a little bit of, where there is some pavement that can be used as a landing space. It's not a sidewalk yet, but there is some pavement and it does connect to Park, it does connect, it's a major north-south.
But it tees into, again, an area on the Rolling Green side that doesn't have any street connected to it. It's offset again. It's no straight over, which is, and so I still have a concern that there is no safe way to get to where the crosswalk would be if you're on the north side of the street. So I think in the scheme of things, we've got to have a good, safe pedestrian plan and not just paint a crosswalk.
Understood, and I won't oppose acceptance of the traffic safety report, but I am really concerned, because
And
again,
I agree.
it's difficult to, it's easy to say, well, nobody's using this,
Yes.
but nobody's using it because
Right.
the facility doesn't
Right.
exist.
But part of the development of the pedestrian strategic plan, I think, would be evaluation of crosswalks throughout the city. You know, there are many needs out there at strategic crossing locations, and I think they should be identified before we just go do ad hoc one at a time. Again, we're trying to build out this network, this intelligent network, and build these strategic connections. So if the policy doesn't allow it in this case, but it's advised by our pedestrian plan, then we can revisit it at that time.
Well, in the Mirror Lakes one, actually, there is a sidewalk plan that goes along the side of that park, right by Mirror Lakes and comes out to Interlochen. There is a plan for a sidewalk there at some point, so that would connect to a sidewalk if it were ever built.
Yeah.
That would take kids to the park.
Are your thoughts the same then on B6, which the mayor also raises, which is the intersection of 55th Street West and Xerxes?
The clarification that I was looking for there was, is there a bus stop on the east side of Xerxes, or excuse me, on the west side, on the Edina side of Xerxes, at 55th and Xerxes? There's one of those corners has a bus stop, and it seems to me that,
It's the
If
four-way
that's-
stop that has the bus stop.
would that be 56th?
54th, isn't it?
Well, you've got one at 58th, and you have one,
56 has a four-way stop also,
Okay.
yeah.
okay.
So that's the question that I had, was if that's the bus stop on the west side, on that corner, I thought a crosswalk might be appropriate there, because there were 11 people that went across that area in the requisite period of time. What'd they say?
Are you talking about the
There
location
were,
where the two restaurants are?
No, this
No?
is, yeah,
That's
they had,
54th.
Yep.
they had 11 pedestrians cross Xerxes Avenue in an 8-hour period at that location.
54th is just south of the creek, so
Right. This-
50,
I was thinking of 56 then, because I know there's a house on the corner that
56.
doesn't look like the house that's in the photo, that where the person told me they've got a bus stop.
so is there, Director Hool, again, your answer is that there is a four-way stop and bus stop at 56th?
That is correct. There's a bus stop going northbound on Xerxes at 55th Street. And then up at 56th Street, there is another bus stop going northbound. I do not see bus stops going southbound, though.
Okay, I know that the sidewalk extends on the west side at least until 55th. Does it also extend to 56th?
Yes.
Okay, so then someone wishing to cross could use the sidewalk till they get to a four-way stop at 56th Street, which is where the bus stop is located.
That's right, yep.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good clarification, thank you.
You know, the one thing that we probably need to do during when we push out a lot of the pedestrian improvements is at the crossings, is that it doesn't need to be marked as a crosswalk to be, by statute, a crosswalk that people can cross there, and vehicles have to stop for people crossing at those unmarked intersections. So every intersection is essentially a unmarked crosswalk. And I think we need to really market that, because there's a lot of instances in town where people aren't given the right-of-way to cross as a pedestrian versus a car traveling by them.
I walk almost 5 miles every day, or over 5,
Yep.
some days over that, and I know that the presence of those striped lines makes a difference to vehicles. It's unfortunate that it takes it in, and I appreciate your clarification. I keep telling people about that too, but there are motorists who do not know that rule, and when they see a pedestrian standing and waiting to cross, they act like the pedestrian is the problem and in the wrong. So I think that where it is appropriate, the painted crosswalk will be helpful.
So, I mean, this is persuasive to me that the northbound bus is one that you catch on 55th and Xerxes on the Minneapolis side of the street. And really, our requester is saying there are people going across the street to catch the bus downtown Minneapolis, and they've got to go across an unmarked intersection to get there. And we got 11 pedestrians crossing Xerxes in an 8-hour period. I'm really wondering whether this is something that we should have somebody take a second look at, because I think it would be worthwhile thinking about a crosswalk at that location.
You could direct staff to take a second look, and actually, this is a county roadway, so we'd have to get permission from the county and maybe run it by the county first to see if they're for us marking a crosswalk at that location. A lot of times they aren't, but we could see what their reaction is.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with France Avenue, and I know that the county doesn't like the painting, but I agree with the mayor that if the bus stop is at 55th rather than 56th, then I think that's a factor that weighs heavily in favor of a crosswalk.
Yeah, so would you have them take a second look at that?
Will do.
And then the other issue, well, back to Interlochen for just a minute. I know I've met with folks that live in that Cooper neighborhood, and they would love to see a sidewalk on Interlochen, and then some way to get across Interlochen. So I think, you know, well, Member Bennett pointed out correctly, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation. I think you've got it sorted out as best you can. Do the sidewalk study first. Maybe we'll put a sidewalk in. Maybe it goes on the south side, and we figure out a way to get people back and forth across the street.
Great.
Okay, what was the other one, Member Bennett?
It's C.
The 61st and
C5,
Kellogg.
61st and Kellogg, yes, thank you. And
Yes.
Director Hool, can you tell us what the status of that is at this time? The staff report indicates that it's still under study.
It is. What the Transportation Commission requested that we look at is what we'd refer to as a basket weave of stop signs. We don't have a policy in place right now to be looking at basket weave, so we wanted to pull that together, and maybe that's a secondary criteria warrant on stop signs. If we don't meet warrants, do we look at a basket weave? So I want to have that discussion with the Transportation Commission before we recommend installing a stop sign at that location.
City of Minneapolis uses them extensively in the southwest area between Lake Harriet and Lake Calhoun and France Avenue. I know the City of St. Louis Park uses them. I don't know if they use them citywide, but they use them successfully in the Minnetonka Vista and Browndale neighborhoods. And then I believe that the City of Richfield has instituted a basket weave pattern of stop signs citywide.
Right, they have, yes, yep.
I just think that for the user, yield signs are not followed as meticulously as the stop is. You know, yield and merge seem to be issues in Minnesota sometimes. So why not go with a more dedicated stop? And I know that there's one. Is it one block to the
North, yep.
to the north?
Yes.
But there's also one on cross streets on Kellogg, one block to the east, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
So I just think, you know, when you have a couple yield signs and a sea of stop signs, it also creates confusion and people don't necessarily adhere. And down that street, you're coming from a commercial node, so they already are probably traveling a little bit faster. And then you hit that yield sign, and that's why there's been 2 accidents at that intersection?
Right.
Okay.
And what we're doing at staff level is we're actually going to be watching it the next 2 days, because since it's a block off of the Valley View and Wooddale, is a potential cut through. So we want to take a look at it to see which direction we want to face the stop signs if they are installed, to help reduce the cut through the neighborhood.
Member Bennett?
I understand the importance of warrants, and I also agree with staff that if people develop stop sign fatigue, they learn to ignore them. However, I am experienced also with yield signs being converted to stop signs and that requisite number of crashes being reached pretty quickly over one summer. And so I agree with Member Sprague that the stop sign does make a difference when we're looking at a major north-south connector and people leaving a more major roadway like Valley View Road. So I support staff looking into this further and hope that that staff can reach a recommendation that fits the needs of the neighborhood. Thank you.
I concur with my colleagues on that, and I thought we had one of our fellow residents that wrote a very articulate email today on that issue. So I would give this a real careful look. Member Bennett, do you want to move the report based on that discussion?
Yes, I will move it.
Before she does that, may I, I'll second that.
Sure. And then go ahead.
Okay. I also had discussion on item 4, which was section C. That's for parking restrictions across from the school, and it's a request from the supervisor of transportation for Edina School. And it says it was, after discussion, it was decided that police enforcement would be the first solution using the 6-hour parking rule. And I guess I'm just a little bit leery that that's going to solve the issue. It seems like those are more short-term school-related parking and not, long-term, especially during the day. I mean, there's no reason for someone to be parking there and there's only a couple houses on that side.
Yep.
Between Mavell and 70th.
Right.
So is there another option of doing a parking restriction that is, a couple hours or something?
What we did is, our law enforcement folks actually had contacted the school, and actually it was staff that was parking, school staff that was parking there, so they're parking more than 6 hours. So
Okay.
we corrected that issue, and that issue has pretty much gone away.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other comments? We've got a motion and a second on 5D, which is the traffic safety report of November 7, 2012. All those in favor of adopting the report say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And then it was 5H, which is the report on the town's road wetland. Member Bennett.
Yes, thank you. I believe that others have probably received telephone calls. I know that we have some correspondence, and so would like to hear from Mr. Bintner on this issue. It does occur to me that in addition to the long-term examination, study needs, and implementation, there may be some shorter-term things that are being sought as well, and would like to, again, hear from Mr. Bintner on this.
Thank you. Mr. Bintner, welcome.
Councilors, did you want the short version of this presentation or the long one? The short, all right.
You'll let your boss decide, I guess.
He's spoken.
This is a report that was requested from the City Council from a July 25th letter and an August 6th discussion at the council meeting. Essentially, it reports on an issue in a low landlocked wetland in the White Oaks area on Towns Road. A lot of issues were brought up in the letter and the conversation, and I tried to address most of them in this report. The short answer summary is the problem is known to the city. It's in our planning documents. It's in our comprehensive water resource management plan. It's even prioritized there. It is real. Over the last decade, there has been notable changes in the aerial photos and an increase in the cattails and a decrease in the amount of tree cover in that forested wetland. There are solutions available. Some of it's going to require some study, and the solutions are, the long-term major solutions are capital intensive in nature, and the engineering recommendation takes the format of finding efficiencies in implementing those capital projects in coordination with the major street reconstruction programs outlined in your CIP recommendation, ENG 13001 and ENG 13004. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Member Bennett, do you want to
First
continue
of-
with the short term?
Well, I understand the advisability with a budget that has a number, we have core city services, we're trying to keep that high level, we're trying to keep levy increases low. And so for major, again, capital intensive solutions, I can see timing them to other projects. It did not appear clear to me from this document that those are the only solutions, and in fact, in terms of the maintenance of the area, in that it is city land and is so visible. It's not a nature area that's hidden away. It's really, if you view it as a circle, half of that circle is public roadway, public view, and there's also not much buffer between it and the homes that are nearby. So any issues with odor and mud have direct daily impact on the people who live around them. So I think to look till 2015 for a study in 2017 for any solution doesn't seem reasonable. Again, understanding that capital intensive solutions may need to be reached. What can be done in the shorter term, both in terms of assessing what's going on and responding to going on. And I will say that this is another area of town I'm very familiar with, and I wonder whether or not there will be trees left in 5 years if this is delayed that interval of time. It would be a different study at that point because it wouldn't be the same kind of natural area that it's apparently been classified as. But I do think there's some kind of urgency with finding some kind of intermediate solution.
Member Swenson?
Well, I understand Member Bennett's concern for that kind of stretched out term. I know we are voting on a 5-year CIP, which includes everything already that we're doing for this year. Last Tuesday night, we voted on 6 street reconstruction projects that had millions of dollars of sewer and water work that we've already committed to. So while I understand, a concern to move before the trees die, I also know that we have committed, at least for the next 12 months, all of our sewer and water funds for projects already. And on the dais today, we have a water quality report with issues on it of the water for our city for drinking. So, where we may move up a study, I can see doing that, but I certainly can't see changing something to be done next year when we've already committed all the funds to do it by vote.
As I understand as well on that point, our CIP runs out of funds to do every single project in it in a couple of years. We have to continue to prioritize and stagger projects as it is. So there's a real funding issue going forward, even in our CIP, that needs to be addressed in future years. So I have to defer to an approach that creates as much efficiency as possible. Basically, we're doing stormwater management techniques in the transportation right away to try to influence the outcome here. But I would also look to perhaps study the issue earlier and then identify some solutions, and some of those could possibly be intermediate, as Member Bennett said.
Well, what sort of,
Member Brindle?
Ross, what sort of temporary solutions can be put in place on a short-term basis before we get to the more permanent solutions that would need the larger dollars?
Member Brindle, in the process of engaging the neighborhood, that question did come up, and well, I was hesitant to answer because I don't really have a sense of the nature of the problem. First, once we understand the nature of the problem, we can start attacking it efficiently. But if that's not the first step, we can always suggest low capital, intensive volume reduction measures to reduce the amount of flow going to that area. Whether it is significant and can actually cause a change, I don't know. But nonetheless, I suggested a few of those to the neighborhoods. And they'd be voluntary things that the neighborhood could do on their own. However, that wasn't really enough because of the uncertainty to assuage their fears that the wetland's going to lose all its trees in that 5-year time.
Can I? Actually, the neighborhood actually has submitted a petition that's on your dais also tonight. And there's number 3, there's actually 4 bullet items that are listed on it. And the first 3 to me looks like that could be potentially done in the city's normal operating budget for the most part, depending on what the intensity of the planting becomes. But the removal of the trees and invasive species, that it's varying away from the practice that typically the park has taken on. If a tree falls in a natural area or city-owned area, that's not an activity area, that they leave it lie basically. So that would be varying from that practice. But I'm driven by there today. There isn't that many trees that are left out there that we, through the winter months, possibly pull out. And I'm just kind of speaking for Brian Olson, our Public Works Director, too, on that. The other one is planting, improving the boulevard area around the natural area. We can take a look at that and how intensive plantings would be that to kind of help out that area, but at the same time, when it's studied, that it's not going to be throwing those planting materials away. And then planting trees in the remaining high ground is to figure out what type of a tree to plant in the high ground areas.
Are there any grant programs available to help fund that from the watershed?
We'll look at that also, because there's potential grant programs. I know there is grant programs that are for the private properties, not so much for the government agencies, but for private properties to improve wetland areas. So we could possibly work with the surrounding neighbors, similar that we looked at for Lake Harvey for improving that water quality.
Member Bennett.
One of the arguments for urging participation by the watershed district is that the nature of this area really has changed in the last dozen years. And I think it is filling a larger role for the watershed than it was doing before with the additional volume of water that it's taking on. And if it's going to not have a long-term solution anytime soon, it would seem that the watershed's participation in doing what it can to ameliorate would be desirable and fair.
Correct, yes, yep.
Personally, I thought the memo that came to the dais from the White Oaks Improvement Association was very reasonable in its approach in terms of some short-term solutions that seemed to me to be low-cost, highly effective solutions, at least for improving the aesthetics of the area. For years, I think we've all probably driven through that beautiful neighborhood, and you hit the downslope there and head down through the swamp, and you feel like Ichabod Crane waiting for the Headless Horseman to show up out there. And it's pretty dank. It's kind of depressing. I think getting some of that stuff cleaned up at a minimum cost within our general operating budget would be a sort of a showing of good faith on the part of the city towards its residents, because I think they correctly point out we help create some of this problem. So to the extent we can try to fix it on a short-term basis and improve it a little bit, maybe even improving some of that curb and drainage swales without too much cost through your department, we can get some of those things done this winter, and then turn our attention to the longer-term issues that are involved, and maybe we can get the watershed involved as well. We've got another nice report from them on Minnehaha Creek from 54th to France Avenue that they're wanting to help on, and they seem to be in a real accommodating sort of position right now. So I think we should explore that opportunity as well. I think my colleagues make a very good point on that. Anyone else?
With those comments, I would also suggest that we move that study up, if possible. Maybe 2014.
I'm not so inclined to put a date on it, not
Just
knowing
move it
what
up.
staff's work plan is, but I think there really is an urgency here. And also, we know that there are lakes and ponds and wetlands that go through cycles. This is not going through a natural cycle. This is really a man-made change. And in that way, I would like to see the city stepping up sooner, to at least identify the cause, and then perhaps there can be a staging of solutions as well.
There is an action requested, a recommendation from staff, but I'm just wondering, as I listen to my colleagues, whether we should just accept the report right now without calling for action on it, but then add in the short-term solutions recommended by the the White Oaks Improvement Association, at least with respect to the three bullet points in paragraph 3 that Director Hull referred to, and take a look at the fourth one to see if we can do some of that work within the existing operating budget as well. Is there a motion to that effect?
Well, are you requesting that all that work be done depending on time and budget, or you're requesting that all that work be done?
I'm requesting that the work set forth by the White Oaks Improvement Association set forth in paragraph 3 of their December 18, 2012 letter be done with this winter, 2013, with respect to the first 3 bullet points under subparagraph 3, and that staff look at bullet point 4, which is improving the curb, drainage, swales, and general appearance of the area for walkers, and cost that for us and bring it back to us so we can decide if we want to do that work yet this winter. But the rest of the work, I think we should
So you put a
try to get done.
timeline and you're putting whatever dollar amount on the first 3 bullet points. Is that what I hear you
Because
saying?
I hear Director Houle saying we can do it in our existing budget and they're low
But
cost.
I didn't hear him give a timeline for it,
We-
Mayor, so I'm concerned about that.
What I would suggest is that we take a look at, inventory what dead trees are out there and how we can get them out through the winter months, depending upon the snow events. The other two, the planting and improving the boulevard area around the natural area and planting trees in the remaining ground, we're gonna have to come up with what the cost of those trees are and what a plan is, and if we can afford those. Because what I think might be the solution or the plan, the residents might think otherwise. It's been our experience, we might be too sparse on some things.
All right, so I concur that at least the second 2 bullet points of the 3, I mean, we can't do that in the wintertime anyway. We're not going to be planting any trees, so.
Well, we often ask our planning department to work with a builder when we're talking about a landscape plan. Why wouldn't we ask our engineering department to work with the neighborhood under bullet points 2 and 3?
Thank you.
Well, and the watershed may well have a very interested and loud voice.
I would be fine with that too.
In what
but
improvements are appropriate.
Right. I don't want to mandate that something happen that the neighbors maybe don't like, we can't afford, or that we don't have the time and ability to do.
Or that the watershed would.
So
Or that the watershed doesn't want.
Yeah.
how about a motion that we accept
4H.
Bittner's report, and that we direct staff to research the short-term solutions outlined in the White Oaks Association letter, and also consider advancement of the time frame for a comprehensive study.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your input on this. It was very helpful. All right, next item was still on the consent agenda, was the amendment to the retail lease agreement for the Hornets Nest with Velocity Hockey Center. I just had a quick question. The new lease commencement date based on the amended agreement is January 30, 2013 instead of December 1. Because I didn't have the lease itself in front of me, I just wanted to make sure that the lease term didn't get reduced by 2 months. And that it's the same period of time that we're talking about. It's just beginning, it just has a later start date.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then I would move 5J.
4J.
It's shown as, it's actually 5J. Because we amended we changed the agenda.
I'll second your whatever
Yeah.
number.
She's seconding the amendment to the retail lease
second
agreement
J.
adoption. You don't have to call me Jay. No. Anyway, all right, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. carried. That concludes the consent agenda. And we're now going to move to public hearings. And the first matter in front of us, we have two of them this evening, is the couple of proposed actions involving the 6500 France Medical Plaza building that was approved here on a preliminary basis in early November. Director Teague.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. What I would ask the council would be to consider both of these items. You can do it all in one motion if you would like. This is the last step in a project that you're all very familiar with. It's the medical building at 6500 France. So what's before you this evening is vacation of utility easements in order to accommodate the new building, and final rezoning to PUD, final development plan, and the zoning ordinance amendment that would create this PUD zoning district. The property is located kitty corner from Fairview Southdale Hospital. The proposal is to construct a 5-story medical office building, 102,000 square feet, would have retail on the main level, potential for a coffee shop there at the intersection of 65th and France. Again, the council has granted a comprehensive plan amendment to allow 5 stories here on the property and preliminary rezoning to the PUD. To quickly go through the utility easement vacation, what's shown on the screen here is the existing utilities easement and utilities and easement that runs along the south property line. There's a water line and a sewer line that run through there. And that would the building would encroach within that area. So what the applicant needs to do is relocate that water line. It would come along 65th Street and then down France. And they would connect with the sewer off of this location here. So again, it would be vacating this easement area and relocating all those utilities. That would all be at the expense of the applicant, and with the establishment of these easements as shown on the screen. With regard to the development plan, the plans have not changed since the preliminary review and approval by the City Council, with the exception of the chiller. You may recall that it was proposed to be located on the ground along the south lot line. Noise study was done and found that it didn't meet some of our standards. So they have relocated the chiller up onto the top of the parking ramp in this location here, further away from the Point of France to the south. This is a look at where the chiller would be located on top of the parking ramp. It would be screened by the stairwell that would come up out of the parking ramp in this location here. So it would be well screened from Point of France. Again, the site plan has not changed. 25-foot setbacks with that podium height, 35-foot setback for the bulk of the building, 25-foot setback on 65th Street, 15 along the west lot line, and 20 feet and 30 feet to the south. There would be a right out onto France and a full access off of 65th in that location there. Again, this is the same renderings that we looked at the first time. Again, 5-story building. There would be the 2-story podium height on France. Go back one. There would be the bike storage for the bike racks would be interior into the parking ramp. Again, the trash enclosures would all be interior. The landscaping meets all of our minimum code requirements. Based on code, they need 34 overstory trees. They will have well over 60, plus with a full complement of understory. And they have submitted a lighting plan that does conform to all of our zoning ordinance requirements. Signage would be required per the RMD zoning district. That's similar to all of the properties adjacent to this, so it would be consistent. Again, just to quickly go through the buildings. And again, you've seen all these before. Again, it would be 62 feet in height per the comprehensive plan amendment. This would be the main entrance off of 65th. One thing that I didn't include in the approving resolution that's before you this evening, when the council approved this on a preliminary fashion, you had mentioned a requirement for some public art in this location right here. I did not carry that condition forward, so if you're apt to approve this tonight, I would suggest that you would add that back in, and we can make that change. So again, here's a look at the intersection of 65th and France. And I believe the applicant will go through some of these quickly as well. So primary issues for consideration: are the plans consistent with the preliminary approvals? Again, they are, with the exception of that relocation of the chiller. Is the PUD ordinance acceptable? Again, all of the setback requirements, the building that's before you would have to be built under the PUD ordinance. Any changes to that would have to be brought back before the City Council for consideration. And again, we believe that that utility vacation is acceptable. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission, and they unanimously recommend approval. So with that, staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of the final rezoning, the zoning ordinance amendment that's before you. And Director Houle can answer any questions that you might have on the easement vacations. And also Chuck Rickard is here, who did the traffic and parking study, should any questions come up in that regard. And if the council is comfortable with the zoning ordinance amendment that's before you, we would recommend that you waive second reading.
All right, thank you. Member Bennett.
This is a question for either Director Teague or Director Houle, and that is, what is a private sanitary sewer service?
The private sanitary sewer service would be, on the existing, there's actually a sanitary sewer main, and the private sanitary sewer service is actually the sewer service that goes into the buildings themselves, from the main to the building. There isn't really a public sanitary sewer service unless it's a public building, so it's going to a private property.
Okay, I guess my confusion arises from the staff report, which says that remove sanitary sewer main. This is the first item, the vacation of the utility easement. And the sanitary sewer main serves both existing buildings. A public sanitary sewer main will no longer be required. The new building will have a private sanitary sewer service that will run off of and connect to then public mains?
Yes.
And in what location? And how is it different from what exists today? Other than that there are the two services today and there will be only one service going forward.
On this drawing in front of you here, and it's kind of hard to see with the light green line, but there's two existing buildings, 6500 France at this location. There's a trunk sanitary sewer line that runs along the north side of the pond by Point of France, and then there's a main line that comes off and serves the Cornelia Place apartments, and then it also serves the two buildings that exist on the site today. This main along the south side of these buildings would be removed as part of the development project. They would then service, and basically there are services that go into the existing buildings. So that's what I'm kind of referring to as a private sanitary sewer service. With the new building, let's see, the new building, which is located here, there's an existing sanitary main that runs from the hospital along the south side at this location. So the new building would be served off of that main, and then the parking ramp, the lower levels of the parking ramp would be served off of the to the west. So what I was referring to was removing this sanitary sewer main, and that's part of the easement vacation also.
All right, thank you. That helps a lot. I have another question with respect to your recommendations, and that is that in the resolution that's before us this evening, Section 3 approval, Condition 5, states compliance with the conditions required by the city engineer in his memo dated November 20, 2012. And do we pick a month, or how do we?
Yeah, we would strike January.
Okay. And then my last question or comment is more for Director Teague. Thank you, Director Houle. And that is that I was the one who advocated for the inclusion of the condition of public art, and that was because the applicant's own narrative made a lot of that in every one of its iterations. Every time the applicant came forward, they included this statement, and in its most recent form it states, it's number 19 on page A25 of the staff packet, the entrance traffic circle will have an area for a significant piece of art on the center area. We are planning a special commissioning for this feature. I believe that we had some discussion at our previous consideration of this about some communities that actually require a percentage of project cost to be devoted to public art. And I'm not interested in doing that. I'm just interested in having the applicant actually do what they told us they were going to do.
I would support that.
Thank you.
Other questions for Director Hull or Director Teague?
I have a question for Director Teague. We received some correspondence from Point of France, the Board of Directors, about removing the gazebo. Did you have a chance to talk to that person directly, and do you have any feedback you can share with us?
I have not talked to the representative at Point of France directly. We did a lot of phone tag. I have spoken with the applicant, and I believe they would be willing to remove that gazebo.
And the sidewalk.
And, yeah, that's right, and the sidewalk as well.
All right, I have a question for Director Teague. I take it that the plans that we were seeing tonight, these final plans, are consistent with the plans we preliminarily approved on November 5th.
They are. They're virtually the same with the exception of just the relocation of that chiller unit.
For some reason, I thought we saw the chiller up on the roof of the parking ramp, because they had that
We
problem
did.
between the Planning Commission preliminary approval and our preliminary approval. And I thought it was there. Mr. Farr is nodding his head
Yeah, I think you're
affirmatively.
right. Chris brought that one forward, and I believe that's correct. They did make that change after Planning Commission.
Okay.
It's in a little boxed-in area.
All right, let's, if no more questions for staff, I'll bring the proponent forward. Mr. Michael, Mr. Farr, Mr. Bernardi, whoever wants to come forward. Let's take about 10 minutes and tell us what you've done since we were last together. You've been to the Planning Commission, of course, and let us know what we need to know to make a decision tonight.
Very good. Thank you,
After the
Mr.
public hearing, of course.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, it is a pleasure to be before you this evening. My name is Stephen Michaels, Mount Development, 3600 Minnesota Drive, Suite 525, Edina, Minnesota. We're here this evening to request your final approval for the new project. The plans have been reviewed both at the preliminary plan review session on November 5th and then the Planning Commission on November 28th. The site plan has been reviewed by the Board of Point of France. They have made a formal request before you this evening to remove the gazebo. We are in agreement with that. Marilyn Kemme, the president of Point of France, is here, and she'll make some comments during the public testimony if you would like. So we are in agreement with a staff report that is dated November 28th. We will add the art feature. It's shown on all of our plans, and we're excited about that. I've spoken to the director of the Edina art community, and we're going to have some fun with that topic. So we would request that we remove the gazebo, and yes, the art feature will be part of the approval process. We would certainly ask that you waive the second reading so that we can begin development and construction of the project. So Mr. Bernardi is here, the owner of the building of Aurora Investments. He can answer any questions, and certainly Ed Farr, the project architect. So that we're open for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Questions for Mr. Michael?
I do.
Member Brindle.
Just looking at the stormwater plan, it's all underground for this building. And how are you working with 9 Mile Creek Watershed District, and where are you in that process?
We have made application to 9 Mile Creek. I believe we'll be getting our approvals this month. We're working with all of their engineers. They've reviewed these plans prior to submission to the city, but have not taken official action. So we're above and beyond all our rate control, water quality, and flowage from the site. Certainly our green roof helps substantially, and we have reduced our hard surface on this project. If you look at the two current developments, we're about 8,000 square feet less pervious surface. So we've got a lot more grass area, a lot more plantings, and that'll help the overall water quality for the watershed.
Now, you have a commitment to have a maintenance schedule of the stormwater system. Do you have a civil engineer on retainer, or how do you do that? How do you get the, that system looked at, evaluated, measured, and maintained?
Yeah, we will enter into a management agreement with 9 Mile Creek. Mark Roush of Alliant Engineering. He's a very seasoned civil engineer, and he's done all the design work. Dave Modro of Alliant, and we'll do a great job in that area.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. You want to bring up Mr. Bernardi or Mr. Farr? Or
We
does
are
that complete your
set
test-
unless you have questions.
All right, we don't have, I don't think we do.
I have one question.
Member Sprague.
Regarding the gazebo, I know that was included in the preliminary. In your opinion, was there any benefit to the employees to retaining that space?
No, we feel that we will have other seating areas that are more convenient, more accessible, and probably just a little bit easier for the employees to use. That was not a sidewalk that led to the gazebo, but more of a wood chip type path, and we'd rather do plantings down in that area. We do have Marilyn Kemme here, if she could share a few words representing Pointe-de-France. She is the acting president, if you'd like any comments from her.
Could you actually, Mayor, could I just take a second and have you point out the areas you're referring to? The outdoor areas for the employees, just so the record's clear as to what we're referring to.
You want to get your site plan up on the screen there, Mr. Farr?
There's the site. There's the loading dock.
There we are. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Ed Farr, Edward Farr Architects, 7710 Golden Triangle Drive, Eden Prairie. The outdoor seating areas are primarily in the front entrance of the building, pedestrian entrance off of 65th Street and France Avenue here, where we have created that enlarged plaza area, of course, for that purpose. We also have informal waiting areas on benches outside the front door. My mouse is circling our visitor drop-off area right here, where, of course, we will be able to have visitors wait for pickup or have you. If you may, I can offer this on an overhead camera, this view down that Director Teague showed earlier in his presentation, focusing in on this area where we would hope to possibly have a coffee shop, but this plaza is large enough to have some significant seating areas out there for the enjoyment of the public, as well as our own employees and clinic attendees.
Is there an area on the green roof, it says stair to the roof, on this drawing that's on page, whatever it is, that shows the view, top
Right.
view
Right.
Site plan?
of the site plan? Is there an area for seating or whatever on the roof?
Unfortunately, no. The Minnesota Accessibility Code would require both stairways and an elevator to go up to the roof if we were to allow any type of pedestrian access besides the incidental maintenance of that facility.
Okay, so the stairway is there for maintenance?
The stairway is there as a building code requirement for maintenance.
Okay,
That's
great.
correct. That's why only one stair pops up. So if we were to have a terrace garden, restaurant or something up there, or any other inviting of the public up there, we would need to extend a second stair tower and extend at least one elevator for accessibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks, Mr. Farr.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm going to open this matter up for a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and comment or inquire regarding this proposed project? And yes, ma'am. And I think you were here earlier. You can give us your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes, and you'll get a yellow light there when you've got 30 seconds left. And so if you give us your name and address, we'll...
Thank you. My name is Bernice Brown. I reside at 7151 York Avenue South, Apartment 7, which is the Yorktown Continental Apartments, and incidentally, the first low-income building built in Edina by Archie Given Sr.'s Rainbow Construction Company. It is a 12-story building. We have 24 apartments on each floor. Our residents use either canes, the majority of them anyway, either use a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, a scooter, or an electric chair to get about. Last Wednesday, after the snowstorm, which was 3 days after, I attempted to get out and do some walking. It was a nice day and I wanted to walk to Cub Food. I went only as far as the building next door, and I had to lift my walker across snowbanks that went across the sidewalks. I couldn't keep doing this all the way to Cub. So on behalf of our residents and all the seniors that live down Senior Alley, I feel that we need to have more watchful eyes on how our sidewalks are kept up in that area. I love to walk. I've walked as far as the hospital. I need my walker because I fall, not because I can't walk. And I'm trying to stay strong. So thank you for hearing me out. I did make a complaint and it was resolved right away. But please, perhaps the particular department can be a little more attentive in keeping it squared away. If not, you'll hear from me.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bernice. And you can go ahead and go over to the police department when you're ready, and they'll try to figure out how to help you get back to your building. All right. That was a community comment, in case you didn't recognize it, but a little out of sequence. But let's stick with this particular public hearing. That's okay, Bernice. That's fine. Ms. Kemme, good to see you again.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. I'm Marilyn Kemme, 6566 France Avenue South, Unit 1206, Edina. I am President of the Point of France Association Board of Directors. The Board of Directors have requested the removal of the gazebo and the related walkways to the gazebo in the plan. Otherwise, the board has no objections to the plan that's been presented. Thank you.
Ms. Kemme, why don't you hold on for a second? I think several of us are wondering why. Because some of us kind of like the idea of people that work over in that medical office building have a way to get over and take a look at that lake and have a sandwich. So why does your association oppose this?
I think primarily just it's very close to our property, and we just felt that it would be activity right along our property line.
Okay.
And that's primarily the reason.
Thank you. Thank you for your candor.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In the corner of your property where I think it was Member Bennett proposed a gazebo, what's on that corner of your property?
I don't believe there's anything right there right now. It's the edge of the parking lot.
Okay. So you don't have any recreation facilities or anything back there?
No.
Okay.
Our tennis courts are adjacent to it.
Yeah.
So
That's what I was kind of thinking. You had tennis courts back there. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
But there is nothing there. It's the property between the Cornelia Place Apartments and our property. Other questions?
No, thanks, Ms. Kemme. Is there anyone else that wishes to testify regarding this proposed development? All right, hearing nothing and seeing no one coming forward, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. And now,
I would move.
Member Swenson.
I will move this with reintroducing the part about the public art, taking out the gazebo and waiving second reading.
And the walkways to the gazebo.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, discussion.
So just clarity on the motion. So you are moving the removal of the gazebo in the path?
I am.
And your motion includes a waiver of second reading on the...
It did, but it put back in the public art piece, but I hear that they're amenable to that. And
Okay. Let's have a little discussion on this gazebo issue. I thought that it was a good idea when Member Bennett advanced it in the preliminary phase, where folks working at the medical office building would have access to the pond behind Point of France and be able to enjoy the view, place to have a sandwich or just rest on a break. I have a hard time understanding, frankly, the concern of Point of France on this issue. It's not on their property. It doesn't abut anything that they're using their property for. There's some tennis courts at a distance, and I'd just like to hear from my colleagues. I'm not saying I'm opposed to the motion as made, but I'd like to have a little bit more dialogue on this gazebo issue. Member Bennett?
Yes, Your Honor. May we have the site plan put up, back up under camera, just so we can all see what it is that we're talking about? And actually, I believe my concern was engaging that piece of the water, because it is a very nice feature. And I think the gazebo was the architect's interpretation of that, but I'll take it as it is. So we're looking at, we're looking from the south to the north, and it looks like the gazebo proposed is on the far left, or almost on the western line of the property. The pond to the south of that. The tennis courts that Member Swenson mentioned are running north-south, and then there's the loading zone. Am I correct in my recollection that that loading zone leads into an under-building parking? So there's actually a garage entrance that connects to that loading zone. And then there's a cooling tower, and actually quite a structure around that cooling tower, shielding residents of the building, I think, from both sight and noise from that cooling tower. And then the driveway continues to France Avenue. So I will go with I will vote with my colleagues on this, but I do think it's sort of tucked out of the way. It seems to be on the very edge of the property.
Member Sprague?
That's my reason for striking it, because I think it's too far removed from the use to get a high level of activity. Also, I think on this side we focused on making this a buffer, not necessarily an amenity. We did the louvered on the parking, and we checked to make sure the lighting was Cobra and downlit, and wanted to soften the roof, not only for stormwater management, but also for the residents to be looking over something that's pleasant, as we've been discussing at the Galleria site and the Southdale apartment. So I just don't. If it were closer to the back door, I could see it, being used, and then it might be worthy of requiring the cost for it. But I just don't see the rational basis it being so far down the road of that parking structure. So
That's really my opinion as well, is that it's too far away to really feel like it's connected to that building. It creates a maintenance job for somebody to upkeep a gazebo, because they wear out, they need, they do their thing, as does the walkway. And I just, when it appeared, we all kind of chuckled because it directly addressed the question from Member Bennett. And, but I think it would get limited use at best. So I think it's wise.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. I think if we're indeed in the business of deciding on balance, would we rather have public art or the gazebo? I'd rather have the public art. So thanks for those insights. We've got a motion to adopt Resolution 2012-175, which deals with vacation of utility easements, and then the final rezoning on the creation of the PUD3, which is a roll call.
That, Your Honor, that's all I was going to say, is just to make sure we include the vacation of the utility easements in the action.
I didn't hear that in her motion. Do you want to amend, and then I'll accept?
Well, I meant it to be in the motion,
Okay.
so if you need to hear it, yes, that is included in my motion. If you'd like to amend
Your motion.
Your motion.
Can I amend your motion?
Yeah, no, you
Second.
amended my motion, now you can second my motion. How about that?
So
Your motion covers both.
2012-175 and 2012-176. Okay.
All right. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Sprague.
Aye.
Member Swenson.
Aye.
Member Bennett.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to this new, beautiful building in our community as part of our medical campus. So, Mr. Bernardi, thank you for making the investment in our community. Mr. Michael. Mr. Farr, thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
We know it will continue through to completion, so we'll see you again sometime down the road. All right, the next public hearing we have in front of us deals with our wellhead protection plan, part 2, and Mr. Bintner has this matter as well. Mr. Bintner, welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilors. The public hearing ahead of you is on the part 2 of the city's wellhead protection plan. This is a plan that was initially started 10 years ago, and this is its first update. It's required under the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act in 1986. Our initial plan was from around 1990, and there's been significant changes in the science and understanding of geology in the meantime. Wellhead protection plans come in 2 parts. The first is understanding the science and the geology and the vulnerability that that geology creates to our wells. And tonight's public hearing is on the second part, which is the implementation plan, what we're going to do, what kind of potential contaminant sources are out there in the environment that could potentially get to our wellhead, and how do we start to lessen and reduce that risk. The changes from the initial plan in 1990 are fairly significant, and the majority of the reason that they are is that our understanding of the science of our wells is a lot better. We have a much updated Metro Model 2.0, where we have a lot better understanding of the flow. There's also some new requirements that we deal with the fractured nature of our aquifer and how it can transmit water and pollutants with it potentially a lot quicker. So the old wellhead area, if you see on this this figure, we have what is now just the inner wellhead management zones in kind of an orange shape. That was about the size of the old wellhead protection area and the drinking water supply management area. Now the area covers almost the entire city of Edina and all of our neighboring communities, and then it even reaches up into Plymouth and Golden Valley at its northernmost extent. Because that area is so much expanded, we went, pardon me, we went from 183 sites in 2001 that were potential contaminant sources in that small area to over 1,900 today. the slide shows some of the different sites that are encompassed in that drinking water supply management area. The key strategies that this plan proposes to limit the risk and to continue to develop a better understanding of the nature of that risk is a robust effort in information collection and management, continuing to take good records when the city has point of contact with a land development or some other process or a street development where we're digging in the soils and we're uncovering potential pollutants, making sure that we're taking the opportunities to collaborate with all of the other actors that also have wellhead protection areas like the neighboring cities that overlap ours and that may be doing similar activities to reduce risk. Educating the public and stakeholders and overlapping those requirements of our stormwater pollution prevention plan where they deal with pollution prevention. And then promoting the sealing of unused and abandoned wells. Well, you know, a good portion of our wellhead is in low vulnerability, that green shade from a couple slides ago. There's also many holes punctured into it through the wells that have been drilled in the past, and making sure that they're well sealed and they don't have a connection between the different aquifers that we draw from. And the next steps, this is a public hearing. We take public input at this point, and then we forward it on to the Minnesota Department of Health for their review and approval. At that time, this report will come back to the council to describe some of the workload and what we're going to be doing to implement the plan, the implementation, and then we start to integrate all of the plans that we're going to be doing in the future. Next year's stormwater pollution prevention plan being the large one, and annual reports. Today here, if you have any questions, are the author of the plan, Eric Tomlinson from Source Water Solutions, and John Freitag, principal planner at the Minnesota Department of Health.
Questions for Mr. Bittner, Mr. Tomlinson? Member Swenson.
When we built the spray machine that's over by Jerry's to clean water coming from, does that affect anything in this particular plan, or we did that to protect the well water that we had in that area that was coming from? Because I know you rerouted pipes and...
Yep. The treatment plant that we have in the lower level of the parking ramp at Jerry's or Grandview Square area, it was to treat the vinyl chlorides and other contaminants in the water, and actually to capture the 3 wells within the same aquifer to prevent it from getting in our other wells. So it is part of this plan here, kind of a strategy is how do we react to contaminants and a plume coming through the city to capture it before it gets in other areas.
And now that we've done that and it's up and running, can I ask how successful we think that is, that strategy?
So far, very successful in treating the vinyl chlorides. There'll still be ongoing investigation and testing of monitoring wells that are located to the north and west and such. So over time, we'll be continuing to monitor that with the Department of Health and the PCA to determine, if we are successful. The one test of successfulness will be that if we're not going to be recognizing any contaminants that are further south over time. So,
which is why I think we did it, because it was moving and we needed to do something before it continued to move farther south.
That's correct, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other questions right now for Mr. Bittner? Very comprehensive piece of work, guys. It's very impressive for all of you that assisted our community on this. We thank you. Do any of you have any comments? Either of you? No. All right. Let's open this matter up for public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and testify regarding this proposed adoption by the city? Seeing no one coming forward and hearing nothing, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded, we close the public hearing. Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Do we have a motion regarding the Wellhead Protection Plan Part 2?
So moved. I will move public, the Wellhead Protection Plan, Part 2.
There's a second.
Second.
Can I
All
ask a
right.
question
Member
before we
Swenson.
vote? For either of the ones that wrote this, is this plan, does this look normal for city? Are we unusual? I guess, and you're going to need to be at a side podium unless you have a handheld microphone. Okay.
My name is Eric Tomlinson. I work for Source Water Solutions. The address is 213 4th Street East, Suite 418, St. Paul, Minnesota. To address your question, Councilmember.
I mean, you got a lot of colors on here, and some of them look kind of scary. So my question is, are we a normal city, or are we seeing things that we should have a high level concern, a medium level concern about?
The vulnerability, those colors that you're seeing on the map are based on the geology and how protected the source aquifers are from surface contamination. That if you extend that out beyond the borders of that area that you see on the map, it varies as well. And Edina is the first metro community to update their plan. And as Ross mentioned before, the Duismas were much smaller that first go around because we do have a better understanding, and there are some new requirements that create a larger area management. But as your neighboring communities start updating their plan, it's very likely that they're going to see their areas grow and overlap as well. So one of the things that we outlined in this Part 2 plan is the collaboration of neighboring communities. Edina can't enact land use policies outside their borders, but folks in neighboring communities could potentially impact, and vice versa as they update. We're going to see some overlap into Edina. So I don't know if I'm answering your question outright. I think as communities update their plans,
You'll know more,
see.
yeah.
We'll know more.
Okay.
This is the front end of some change in the map.
I think, Member Swenson's wondering is, one of the requirements of the plan was to conduct a potential contaminant source inventory. So
what's required?
that's the plan, right?
Yeah, it's to identify, document, and track, basically. And the sources of this data, various state agency databases, and they're constantly being updated, corrected. There's a lot of sites in there. That was a big part of this Part 2 plan, was verifying sites. The addresses don't necessarily match parcel IDs and landowners, and it's trying to clean that up, I guess.
Member Bennett.
One of the points I think that the report in front of us makes well is that with the expansion of the area, we as a community control what is within our borders. We don't control what is without our borders. And so in terms of other communities' levels of use, in terms of development in other communities, a lot of collaboration and cooperation is going to be called for, but we don't have that same level of control that we do in our own community.
I agree, and thank you for the compliment.
All right.
I have a question. It's more because it's such a pretty picture. In Figure 4, which is soils,
Yes.
this is, do you know that this is the soil makeup of Edina? How do you figure this out?
The U.S. Department of Ag has a tremendous database of soil classification. It's they've done an amazing job classifying and characterizing the soils, and that's what we honestly tapped as our data source for that figure that you're referring to.
So do they change?
Yes, over time, and the USDA does their best to update their data.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and
Well,
that's
it's a fascinating report. I have to admit, much of it went in one eye and out the other, because it's lists of numbers that mean nothing to me. But when I start looking at the makeup of what makes up Edina and therefore our geology and therefore affects our aquifers, it is fascinating. So I wish you luck, and I look forward to more data with lots of pictures, please.
Good.
Thanks.
All right. Other questions or comments? We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. All right, next we're going to move into the community comment portion of the agenda. We had Mrs. Brown earlier that had a sidewalk concern. And is there anyone else that wishes to raise an issue of concern with the council? Yes, sir. Welcome. If you need we'll give you a handheld microphone if you have something you want to display.
Ross Plutzer, 4058 Sunnyside Road. Okay, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah. We'd like to bring a concern up about the commercial node at 44th and France/Sunnyside. And it's a two-pronged request. We've lived at 4058 Sunnyside Road for 23 years. We've seen the area develop. It's a wonderful area. It's the very unique part of Edina. As you all know, it's part of the old streetcar suburb area of Morningside. The 44th and France area really is from 1920s. Very high density, not much off-street parking. Sunnyside Road especially has been more used recently by traffic. It's become a commuter corridor, bicycle traffic, runners, a lot of walkers and that kind of thing going down to the Linden Hills area and to Lake Harriet. Currently there are 3 food establishments, Caribou Coffee, Brugger's Bagels, and the Convention Grill. The Convention Grill has its own parking. The areas for Brugger's Bagels and Caribou Coffee has, and I'll show an area here of their parking, a couple of off-street parking areas, and then really the rest requires on-street parking. Got an overhead here. Here's an aerial from Google Maps. You can see the layout. Really, for on-street parking, there are probably 7 spaces before you get down to the doctor's offices. So maybe altogether 12 spaces before you get to the residential area on Sunnyside. Very difficult to park on France with the number 6 bus that runs there. In the back, you'll see parking required for 3 apartment units over Brugger's Bagels, and all of the other establishments, which would be Dick's Barbers, the running store, Caribou, Brugger's Bagels, and what used to be Wayne Kostrowski's pastry shop, which is now, as of January 2013, going to be a Pizza Lola spinoff called Hello Pizza. Now, while that's a welcome addition to the neighborhood, we now have 3 grab-and-go food establishments with very limited off-street parking and not much on-street parking. The turn going northbound from France to Sunnyside is about 105 degrees. That creates problems, as does the nature of the traffic that's going to be developed now from people stopping and going. The pizza is going to be by the slice at Pizza Lola. There's no wait staff. There'll be some tables, but pretty much it's going to be in and out. Now we've got 3 establishments like that. The on-street parking, or off-street parking, I should say, from the Convention Grill really services the Convention Grill. In fact, they had to put a fence up about 8 or 9 years ago to hold people from going from the back area behind Caribou. So I don't know if a traffic study's been done there. I don't know if there was a variance given, but certainly there's not enough on-site and off-site, off-street parking to really meet the needs of that particular corner. So I don't know if it's proper. I would respectfully request the council to direct its staff to look at that. It's both a congestion area and a parking area with potential danger for people running across the street, especially at night when it gets dark and people are out to get pizza and the convention grill traffic. It's going to be a lot of congestion there. And secondly, I don't know if you have the pieces there, but in 2003, the 2020 vision did talk about looking at the 44th and France Sunnyside area as a potential for retail development. I talked to the gentleman at the City of Minneapolis Southwest Sector Planning today. In January, they'll start a small area development plan review on their side of the street to be completed by August of 2013. And it might be a good idea for the council to begin looking at the vision from the 2020 plan and looking at a small area development plan for the 44th and France Sunnyside area. It's got great amenities, but it doesn't work right now from a traffic standpoint. And I'm just worried about congestion, but also the safety issues there. There's a one-way, or there's an alley, only one car at a time. I think it's going to be a mess. Pizza
Mr. Placer, I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but you've run over your 3 minutes.
Okay.
I've let you go, but if there's any final point you want to make, I want to make sure that you get a chance
No,
to make it. You made those two good points. And
Okay.
A great presentation.
I'm just
I hate to
finish
cut-
up, and that's
I hate
the
to
only-
cut you off.
No,
but,
that's okay. You should.
yeah.
It's been a long night, and those are the only two. Is that we look at the current situation, but also look at a small area development plan
Okay.
for the area. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in this evening. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi, my name's Brady Willett, and I'm a resident of Eden Prairie, and I'm here to talk about traffic too. I represent a neighborhood group of concerned citizens about the United Healthcare campus that's being built on 62 and Shady Oak Road. And we've been researching and studying this quite a bit, and I'm here just to kind of give a heads up to Edina about all the traffic that it's going to probably impact your city. This new campus is being built for 6,700 new employees, and in 2013 the first two buildings will be opened. That'll bring in 3,000 next year, and they're just now pretty much completing a new parking ramp that'll house 2,600 cars. So those are coming our way, 62, 169, all the neighboring southwest corridors there. And I think this impacts Edina much more than it impacts a lot of communities, because a lot of these communities are going to be trying to go through 62, and when they're frustrated by that, they're going to go off into residential streets, and I'm sure you've already seen the congestion on Vernon and Blake and the other arterial routes through your community since Opus has been developed and gotten busier. So we're just trying to bring all these points up so everyone looks at what's coming their way, because the Minnesota Department of Transportation has no plans in their 20-year plan to increase the size of 62. They're not going to add any lanes. There's been no talk about any other infrastructure that's coming our way on this either. So I think Edina is going to kind of get hammered over the next 4 years as this gets completed and people start trying to commute through your community.
Okay.
Thanks,
Greg.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming over.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right. We'll move on to the next portion of the agenda, which is the reports and recommendations section of the agenda. And
There was one question I thought we could answer about the Pizza Lola thing that I'm going to assume they didn't need a variance. Carrie, can you just answer that question before they leave? That would be easier.
That's correct. The bakery that was there is non-conforming use, so they're going in, operating under that same type of retail establishment. That's part of the reason they can't have any wait staff or seating. They can't increase the seating capacity from what the bakery had previously, so it's continuing that existing non-conforming use.
Okay. Did you hear that? Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted you to at least get an answer, and we'll talk about the other part of it later. Thank you. Yeah, no, I get it.
Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. All right, next matter in front of us, Director Wallen has, which is Resolution 2012-177, setting the 2013 tax levy and potentially adopting a 2013 operating budget. Director Wallen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight in front of you is the final meeting, the final hearing on the budget, the levy adoption. The 2 weeks ago was the Truth in Taxation, or the equivalent to the Truth in Taxation hearing. The resolution that was included in your packet was the resolution that was used in the public on the city's web for the process as it started through the fall, and was used for notification or for the public as well for the Truth in Taxation hearing. So that is what is before you tonight. The resolution before you is a 2.5% levy increase.
Now, per your direction to us from the retreat, we've also prepared an alternative for the council to consider, and that is a levy increase of 1.9.
1.9%, yes.
1.9%. And Mr. Wallen can explain, I think it's about 165,000, is that right, John?
Yes, and earlier in the process, in August timeframe, we had proposed doing some adjustments to the budget, one of which would have, or it was increasing building permits to better reflect where our building permit revenue was. Some of that would have used $165,100 to reduce the amount that the liquor fund transfers to the general fund, and instead transfer that $165,100 to the construction fund for internally funded construction projects. The second option we have, which I've prepared a resolution for tonight, is would keep the increased revenues, or the increased proposed revenues for the building permit revenues, but would not affect or would not change the amount that the liquor fund contributes or transfers to the general fund, keeping that amount at the $765,100 that was currently in the budget, and instead reducing the property tax levy by that same $165,100.
All right, Member Sprague.
Thank you. I believe for a number of reasons we should adopt the 1.9%. One of which is, if you look at a history of our levy increases, we've started to stabilize the budget, which I feel is a fair thing to do in these recessionary times. I think that the keeping it below 2% in the one range preserves that balance between preservation and innovation that we talked about in the dais a couple weeks ago. There's the levy, property tax levy increase history. And so we're starting to flatten the line out. We are extremely good stewards of our residents' funds in many different ways. We all benefit from the long-term financial plan that has gone on for decades preceding at least my service here, and I appreciate that. And I think we should continue that legacy in striking that balance. In addition, we've added some new revenue sources from the franchise fee. We are using some TIF dollars for development. We use special assessments as well for the street reconstruction project. So I feel like this allows us to have a balanced use of all revenue streams and keep our burden on the property tax owner as low as possible to still yet accomplish our objectives.
Member Brindle.
Thank you. Looking at how tight the capital improvement program is already and the projects within that, you and I visited the other day and talked about some of the things that would be either put off or could conveniently be put off and not, we wouldn't feel the sting of that 165,000?
There are a few projects that could be put off and rescheduled. And as Mr. Wallen discussed just a little bit, reprogramming the way that we use our liquor funds and rescheduling a major liquor store project actually is going to account for really most of that change. So, you know, the question really begs the question of why wouldn't you do this if there isn't anything, if there's no negative consequences to it? And in the short run, in the next 2 years, I can tell you that there really aren't. But in the longer term, you know, we've shown you the trend lines for our available capital resources and our desired capital spending, and they really diverge quite significantly in just a few years. So one of our hopes as we moved this budget forward was to develop some capital, a capital levy, so to speak, within that general fund levy, because that's essentially what we do. It's what we have been doing is we have a levy that tends to produce enough money at the end of the year that we then have typically a fairly significant fund balance at the end of the year that we then use for our capital spending. I think it would be desirable for the council and for the city to have that capital levy more defined, better defined into the future, and so that we're not just relying on a year-end fund balance. And that's what we really ought to do in the future, I think, so that we can have a dependable source of revenue for our CIP.
Member Swenson.
So because we haven't broken that off and showed it as a different line item of how we're collecting money, you know, we sat through a business meeting at 5 o'clock upstairs today and talked about the golf dome and the potential that when it comes to rebuilding it, that we will need extra dollars to rebuild it. And now we're talking about taking dollars off. We haven't even put those extra dollars into next year's capital improvement, nor found a way to fund it. I always am concerned, while I understand my colleagues hope to get it under 2, if you looked at that graph of where we used to charge even 4 or 5 years ago, before we were talking about an issue with the federal economy and national economy, I would tell you that I think that to put it at 1.9 is not prudent to do in the long run. It might be prudent to do in the short run, but I don't think it's prudent to do in the long run.
You want me to comment, or you want to? Either. Okay. I think you make a good point about short-term, long-term, and I feel the same way about the economy. You know, I just feel like as we come out of these problems that we've been facing, we need to be very, very careful. And there are shorter-term solutions and longer-term solutions. And for me personally, to keep it under 2%, if we can be at 1.9% on the levy increase, I think that's a way that we can deliver the services that we historically deliver in Edina without increasing taxes, the burden too much on people, and think of it as a interim or short-term solution. Keeping in mind that, as Manager Neal says, we just can't rely on the fact that we're going to have a budget surplus every year, although with the department heads that we have, the city's extraordinarily well managed, and with the manager we have as well. And so, I mean, this year, again, our building permit revenue is running $250,000 ahead of budget. We're going to end up with a surplus at the end of the year over our budget. So for me personally, for 2013, I would support Member Sprague's notion that the levy increase ought to be at 1.9%. I think that we can figure out how to deliver the services that we historically deliver at 1.9% levy increase. Member Bennett.
I favor as much clarity and transparency as possible. And last year was our budget year. This year is our CIP year. And we spent a lot of time in different sessions explaining to people the enterprise budgets and the capital needs of the enterprises. And one of my big takeaways from that process was that people were looking for our enterprises to not be self-sustaining for capital and operating, but certainly for operating, and some of them for capital as well, depending on their accessibility. I think we're moving toward that, but I think that, again, as much transparency as is possible is important to vote on and to sustain. When we raise a levy and we finish a year with a surplus, that money is useful to us. We need it. We're making good use of it. But the question has occurred to me in past years, were we keeping the levy as low as we could have when we finished the year with that kind of surplus? I know it's an art, not even a science, making sure that we end the year in that good position and that we can cover our capital needs. But I concur with the two of my colleagues who are urging a levy increase of under 2%, that these are still recessionary times for many of our residents, not for all of them, but for many of them. There's even kind of a disconnect that we can maybe address in this next year's budget and CIP process between those who are calling for more facilities and those who are feeling particularly concerned about being able to retain their property if the levy rises beyond what they're accustomed to. So we've got that pressure, that conflict within our own community. We can continue to try to explain things as carefully to people as we can, but also keep that relationship between what it is that we're levying and what it is that we're building, what it is that we're maintaining.
Thank you. Member Brindle, any follow-up comments? You had a couple of questions about what we would, how we could make life operate well without that differential between 1.9 and 2.5, which was about 165,000. Has this conversation helped you in your decision
Well,
making?
it has, and Manager Neal and I had this discussion the other day as well. There are a variety of reasons why putting off the project at the 50th and France liquor store makes sense. There are a variety of reasons that are yet kind of in the ether, but they are there. And so that project in itself not needing to take place in the next year does give us the freedom to go under 2%. But I do think that the way we do business, we really need to look at the way we do business as far as planning for our budget, planning for making sure we can cover our expenses, for services, our expenses for upkeep, and we pride ourselves in low taxes. And at the same time, they rise. So I think we have to be real careful.
Manager Neal.
Your Honor, a request I have for the council, and it does look like you're leaning, there seems like there's a consensus developing around the sub 2% levy growth option, is that we've prepared, as I said earlier, an option for a 1.9% growth. The mathematics on calculating a tax levy in Minnesota are quite complicated, and so we've prepared this, and Mr. Wallen has prepared that option for you tonight. I really do ask that you approve one or the other and not some kind of hybrid in between, because one of the consequences of our scheduling this date as late as we do in the year is that we have just a limited number of days to get our final paperwork into Hennepin County. So we have both of those, we have the math and the documents prepared for both of those two options tonight for the council.
Thanks for mentioning that, Manager Neal. I think that was sort of implicit in our conversation, that we understood that it should be an alternative choice and not some hybrid because of the very reasons that you articulated. But I think it's good for folks in the audience and folks at home to understand why we are thinking or ruminating over one or the other. Member Bennett.
If I might, Manager Neal, in past conversations, you have urged us not to create an item in the budget based on one-time money. It would seem that what Member Brindle has described is almost the converse or reverse of that, which is with the delay of a project that it seems it's prudent to delay, that creates one-time money. It doesn't, we're not committing ourselves. This is not a two-year budget year. This is the second year of a two-year budget cycle. So we have that opportunity. We reboot next year. And so treating this money as one-time money, allowing us to keep this levy increase lower, have our year-end report, see what our building permits are doing and the other trends in the city. The decreased expenses, for instance, at Edinburgh. I know that staff has done a really good job of responding to concerns that were brought forward during last year's budget, and in fact raising operating revenue at some of the facilities and decreasing operating expenses at others.
Right, by probably about the same, by likely the amount of money we're talking about here, so you're right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good. Do you have that resolution available that we can have in front of us here?
I have a Deb.
Is it the
Deb
same
has-
resolution number with different computations?
Yes, sir, it is. I have one extra. I had 3 copies for the mayor's signature, and then I have one additional copy if you'd like to.
Can you put it up? Can we shoot it on there, Jennifer? Is that possible? Or is it too small?
Here's.
So this,
maybe that part right there.
Yeah.
This is the, would be the updated levies, and the one in particular would be the 21,824,000.
So are we moving adoption of?
If you move adoption of resolution 2012-177 with a 1.9% general levy increase, you want liquor transfer articulated too and the total levy?
No, just the total levy number.
Also moved.
Yeah.
All right.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Disappear. All right, next matter in front of us is the proposed adoption of the 2013 to 17 capital improvement program. Manager Wallen, you have this matter as well.
Yes, sir. This again was a long process through the year. This was a process that we changed this year in that as last year we went with a 2-year budget, operating budget. This year, summer into fall, we worked on a new redesign of a capital improvement program, which included prioritization of all projects. It was also meant to be more of it's a 5-year program, but yet it's meant to be more of a two-year CIP budget. So we concentrated very heavily on the years, the next 2 years of the 5 years, and looked very hard at those projects within that, coming up with a prioritization that looked at how critical the project was, or how critical the projects were in relation to each other. We again had that document, the CIP, out on our web. One change from the last meeting was in your packet, and that is the addition of the France Avenue corridor pedestrian improvements, approximately $4 million. That was put in front of you in this packet. and would be in addition to the CIP as it's proposed.
All right, so, Member Swenson.
So I take it that the liquor store at 50th is moving off of 2013. Do you move it to 2014 and then take something off of 2014 and move it to 2015, or how would you handle that based on what we just voted on?
We're going to increase we're going to defer the project, and we're going to increase the level of transfer from the liquor fund into the general fund.
Right.
So we need to defer the project out
So
into a
does
future
the
year.
project get deferred to the to 2014, and then
Yeah.
how is that 2014 bottom number just a holding number? So since we will increase it 150,000, do you have to take something off of 2014?
I'd say that's probably true. Would you say?
I would say that would
Okay.
be a fair way to.
But I think we have to be aware that we've
Yeah.
done that
Yes.
as a council.
Right. It would
and
have to be
not just
reflected.
Assume that it'll all balance out in 2014.
All right, so as we've historically done with the capital improvement plan, it's a 5-year plan, but the first year of the program becomes the budget part of the budget for the following year.
That's correct.
And that's the point that Member Swenson is making, is that if 2013 capital improvement program projects are part of the budget, and we've just heard that we don't need to do the liquor store and it's in the 2013 capital improvement program, we got to make some adjustments.
That's correct. That's correct. We would adjust that on the final draft or the final version of the CIP.
All right, Member Sprague.
Thank you. Could you show the construction fund assigned balance trend on page 8 for us? Because that's what Manager Neal was referring to in terms of the need for a dedicated funding line item from the general levy. I think that the public should be aware of that, and because this precedes our conversation we'll have next year about this.
The projected construction fund unreserved balance?
Yes, and if you can just talk us through that.
Maybe move it up just a little bit, John.
Push it up a little bit, John. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Okay, and that's, unfortunately, my book, I guess, is in black and white, so it doesn't necessarily do
Here
justice.
comes a color
with the-
copy for you.
Yep.
The color reads a little better.
Yeah, that's quite a bit better.
What that signifies is that shows a history of the unreserved fund balance, and it's broken down into 2 different categories. One being the construction fund, the yellow being the equipment replacement fund. The projection that is the 5-year plan shows in particular the yellow reserve for the equipment replacement going away altogether, and the green that is the reserve for the construction fund going into a negative balance at the end of the second year of the CIP.
And what you're seeing is just a very predictable outcome of spending more capital than spending more on capital improvements than we're taking in capital improvement revenues.
And it's also a result of in the past, the city has on most years transferred the reserve, the surplus from the general fund. This assumes, we don't assume that we're going to be doing that in the future. If things turn around or turn the other direction and we don't have surpluses, this would be more the result. So if there are surpluses that can be transferred over in the next years to come, that is what would change the direction of that graph.
And so, Manager Neal, one strategy that would assist us in addressing the structural deficit is to have a fixed number in the budget every year to provide us with adequate and stable cash flow. Another strategy that we've all been working on for years is to stabilize the entire enterprise operations and to make them more have a higher rate of recovery in their operations. Is that correct?
That is correct. So having two big sources of dependable revenue every year, one being a tax levy which you can set and impose and collect. So you know exactly how much you're going to impose, you know exactly how much you're going to collect, and then you can leverage that to pay off debt service or however you want to do it. For cities with municipal liquor operations like ours, we currently dedicate a fair percentage of our liquor profits every year towards kind of filling the gaps in our rec enterprise facilities. If those facilities became more operationally independent of that money, we could use that money also for another source of dependable capital improvements over the years. So, and then you begin to put together a pretty reliable fund of money that you can spend $2 or $3 or $4 million a year on capital improvements in the community. But right now, we really don't do it like that, and that's why the graph looks the way it looks.
Thank you.
Member Brindle.
Mr. Wallen, would you please explain how the construction fund is funded, where the dollars come from?
The funding that comes in on an annual basis comes in from, there's $100,000 coming in from the liquor fund, $100,000 coming in from the utility fund. There are some old special assessments that were previous to the street reconstruction projects that started. Those are dwindling, but those amount to maybe $200,000 a year that are coming in. Again, some of those are on the last years, and over the next 5 years, I'm thinking most of those will be gone. So that revenue source within the CIP will be gone. The largest revenue source has been the transfer of the surplus. And then interest earnings lately have been pretty minimal, as in this interest rate environment, interest earnings are particularly on relatively short-term portfolios are not what they used to be.
Okay.
I think that bears some repeating, though, that the biggest and most important source of revenue for our CIP is whatever we have left over in the general fund at the end of the year. That, fortunately in Edina, that's been pretty good over the last couple of years, but that's not, doesn't seem to be a very reliable source of revenue for capital projects. And really, that's really what people, those are not, aside from our services, that's what really makes the community, isn't it?
And also not the most transparent, which is what
Right,
Member Bennett has
right.
talked about.
Can we make that a priority to understanding next year's a budget year, not a CIP year, but with that point of nexus, can we make it a priority to look at that? Because I
Absolutely.
think there is an understanding of capital needs in the community, but I think the transparency would be really helpful.
Sure.
And if I may, one of the things that we had proposed at the beginning of this process was considering that one of the drivers in the past number of years has been, with the surplus, has been the building permit revenues being pretty consistently or being consistently over what we have budgeted. One of the things we did was we did tighten that up. So some of that conservativeness in budgeting, I think, is going away to an extent, to where we're getting closer and closer to the actual budgets, leaving less and less room in the end. And the other downside of that is that in a point in the economy, or just increasing revenues to the point that we're no longer ahead of the building permit revenue, but are suddenly behind the building permit revenue, our surplus can turn around very quickly and become something else. And for 2012 so far, we're coming in fairly close to what we've done in the past, with one exception at this point anyway. And I bring it up just in case that it does come and end up that way, is tax revenues so far this year have come in under what they have been the past number of years as a percentage. And as of right now, we're about 450,000 short on tax revenues. Now, there's one more payment to go. So whatever we're short could end up largely being in that last payment that comes in January. But if it doesn't, that's a consideration as well. That would be typically we're at 99.5 to almost 100% on our tax collections. So if that would end up being the final payment, that'll definitely lower the estimated surplus.
Where's Craig?
So on that point, what's the source of the non-collections? Is it multiple parcels, or is it a single?
Hennepin County typically there is a very computer-driven system. We really haven't been able to put our finger on it. There's been several commercial industrial settlements, but not near to the point that, and that's the reason why I wasn't otherwise going to bring it up, because it seems to me somebody is late on a payment, and it's not something that's in talking with the assessor. It's not something at this point that he can figure that is a court case or something that we can tie into that would be a reason why it wouldn't come in, in January. So I'm still hopeful that the payment we receive in January will catch us up considerably from that. But until that payment comes in, we never know.
Member Swenson.
I'll make a motion to approve the capital improvement program with moving the 50th and France liquor store remodel.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Thank you. And then we've got the next one you have as well, Director Wallen, and that is the second reading on ordinance 2012-22, setting fees for 2013. There were some questions that caused us to hold this over, as I recall. One of them was dog license fees, and then the Morningside water rate issue carried over as well. I don't think that's in this document for the second reading, but why don't you go ahead and take us through this?
That's correct. The changes from the first reading are the Morningside water. Since we didn't know exactly when it would be adopted when Minneapolis would adopt their rates, and our rates are dependent on Minneapolis rates. It was decided to pull that rate off of the ordinance. And then there was a question concerning the increase in the dog license, and Chief Long had addressed that, and that is part of the report and recommendation.
Questions for Director Wallen on this? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2012-22, amending Schedule 185, setting fees for 2013. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And then the next item is the resolution 2012-178. And Lisa Schaefer is not here tonight.
I can.
You're going to handle this matter. This is a resolution from the Human Rights and Relations Commission requesting an amendment to the Minnesota statutes allowing health coverage to be extended to domestic partners at the discretion of local jurisdictions. We've tried this once before, and we got partway through the legislature and didn't make it all the way with a gubernatorial veto. And it sounds like the HRRC thinks it's time to try it again.
Yes, they do, Your Honor. And I was at the HRRC meeting as the temporary staff liaison when they adopted this action. And two members of the commission are here tonight who may wish to speak on it after they've stayed around for a while. So Mr. Stanton and Commissioner Bigby, Commissioner Stanton and Commissioner Bigby are both here. As you might know, state law currently bars local governments from offering employee fringe benefits, specifically health insurance, to the domestic partners of employees, and that means same sex, different sex. It doesn't mean that's the current status of state law. So you don't have the discretion. We don't have the discretion as a city government to even offer that benefit or structure our fringe benefits that way, even if you wanted to. And what the HRRC has discussed is this resolution urging our legislators, specifically I think our legislative team, to press for that change in state law this year. And I don't know if there's any more to it than that. Then.
Let me bring Commissioners Stanton and Bigby up here and ask either one or both of them to comment regarding this work from the HRRC.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Russ Stanton, 5152 Dana's Drive, member of the Human Rights Commission. You're correct. This issue has been before the legislature before. It is the policy, of course, of the city of Edina not to discriminate on the basis of marital status or sexual orientation. When it came before the legislature before, it passed overwhelmingly 83 to 50 in the House and I think 43 to 22 in the Senate. Unfortunately, it was vetoed. I think there is a great deal of interest in passing this legislation. It's permissive legislation. It just allows local units of government to define a dependent for purposes of offering health insurance in the way that they see fit. And it would then be up to the council when it takes out its insurance policy to decide how it's going to define a dependent. So
good explanation. Mr. Bigby. Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you. Arnie Bigby, one of the commission members. I live at 7621 Edinburgh Way, unit number 2110 here in Edina. And I think that all of the reasons outlined in our resolution are really important. Also, there's been a lot of other conversation about this in more recent times, and I think that today I got a survey report from the Human Rights Commission or Committee nationally, and it's very interesting that they survey large companies every year to find out how many of them are providing domestic partner benefits. And of the 688 companies, these are the biggest companies in the U.S., surveyed this year, 89% provide domestic partnership benefits. And what that means is that a city like ours that's interested in having those kinds of companies be located here, having those employees wanting to live here, want to be in a community that recognizes that and that provides those kinds of benefits for our employees. It's also interesting that today in the state of Minnesota, that other communities like us, we were the fourth city in the state to adopt a domestic partnership ordinance and provide as many benefits as we could for our employees. Since that time, other communities have done the same thing. More than half of the population of the state of Minnesota lives in a city that has adopted a domestic partnership ordinance. And I think it's just reflective of the change in times, and it's time for us to do that. And it's certainly going to be just a big factor, I believe, in our business environment. And with our new business development focus, I think that's important. We want to welcome people here.
All right,
Thanks,
you, Commissioner. Mr. Stanton, would you come back up too, Commissioner? I wanted to ask how you thought this resolution would be used at the legislature should it pass the council.
Generally, the legislator introduces it. The last time it was introduced, it had bipartisan authorship. In the House, they allow unlimited authors, and I think it had 32 authors. In the Senate, they only allow 5, and it had 5. I don't think.
You haven't had any conversations yet with our legislative delegation?
No, but our delegation now includes former and future Representative Earhart, who was a co-author when this legislation was passed previously. So I have had a brief conversation with incoming Senator Melissa Franson. I think she's waiting to see what the council's decision is on this.
Your Honor.
Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of your paid staff, we think we don't want to begin advocating for legislation that the council is not politically supportive of. I think that's very important for us to know where you stand before we get actively involved in issues like this or any other issues at the legislature. So one of the part of the importance of adopting something like this is giving a very clear statement to your staff that you are in favor of this, because as you know, once the legislature starts moving and legislation starts happening, it changes rapidly, sometimes from day to day, and there are oftentimes we don't have the ability to come back and ask you, what do you think of this version? What do you think of that version? Because by the time we call a city council meeting, it's changed 4 times,
Mm-hmm.
So if we have an idea of where you stand on this, it's good for us and it's good for the commission members as well, that we could speak on your behalf if we have that opportunity.
Member Bennett.
To that point, I understand that, Mr. Stanton, you had some suggested language that conforms more closely to the legislation that did pass in 2008?
Yes. Council Member Bennett, if you have the resolution before you, actually, there were 2 issues involved here. The first was simply changing the statute to give local units of government the authority to offer or to define dependents at their discretion. And that was covered in the last clause of the proposed amendment. The second issue that came up was the fact that the Minnesota statute is out of conformance with the federal Affordability of Health Care Act. And I guess that's a side issue, but it is in fact out of conformance with it. And the federal act now requires that group health insurance policies cover dependents under the age of 6, regardless of their marital status, regardless of their dependency on the parent, and regardless of what student status. And so what I would suggest to bring it into conformance, not only with the federal statute, but more in conformance with the bill that was introduced a couple years ago, would be to, on the 3rd line of subdivision 1A, after the word spouse, strike and minor unmarried, leave in the word children, strike under the age of 18 years and dependent students under the age of dependent students, strike those words, and then leave in the words under the age of 26 years, strike the words actually dependent upon the employee, and then leave the rest. And that would simply...
All right, let me make sure I understand this. So that would read that subdivision 1A dependents, which is the definitional section, would read, notwithstanding the provisions of Minnesota Statutes 169, section 471.61, as amended by laws 1971, chapter 451, section 1, the word dependents as used therein shall mean spouse, children under the age of 26 years, and others as defined by governmental units at their discretion.
You have it perfectly.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion with that change in the resolution language?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2012-178 with the definition of dependent in subdivision 1A changed as read. Further discussion?
Yes. I just have a question. If this is in place, how would someone identify that the benefits are there if they go to the hospital or to an insurance company, that the benefits are there because in the state of Minnesota, this is the statute? How do they take paper with them, or do they identify that person as their domestic partner? How do they do that?
It will depend on what your insurance policy says. This gives you the authority to define a dependent.
So it gives you the authority then to enroll them as a co-insured?
Yes,
okay.
One of the issues, if you read the memo from the League of Cities, one of the issues is how do you know when somebody is in a significant relationship?
Right.
And I think that's one of the benefits of the city of Edina having its registry, is that is one way you can define who is in a committed relationship, is that they are so registered.
Great.
So, thanks.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Commissioner. And thank you too, Commissioner Vigby. It was a nice presentation from both of you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And now we are back visiting potential adoption of an ordinance concerning a change in council salaries. And Manager Neal, you have this matter.
I do, Your Honor. This is an item that was presented to the council at the last council meeting. We've since had a chance to examine information about comparable salaries in other similar communities. As you might guess, there hasn't been much move in the salary structure in cities that are comparable to ours, much move either way. So your status kind of ranking in that hierarchy of cities is about the same. So given that not much has changed with the newer data, I would propose that the council adopt the proposed council salary that's included in the action in your packet tonight.
All right, so the proposed action kind of gets us to the middle of the pack, so to speak, amongst councils in the metro area. Is that right or wrong?
That is correct, Your Honor, and I think it's also worth noting that even if you do take action on this, it does not go into effect until January 1, 2015, and that's pursuant to state law about how elected officials, local government elected official salaries are set.
All right, Member Sprague.
Thank you. So we've delayed taking action on this in the previous years. What does it average out to per year on the increase?
The average that I have calculated anyway, depends when I'll give you the average from when the council last had an increase to when this proposed increase would go into effect, and the average during that period is 4.3% a year, and that's unadjusted for any inflationary impact that's occurred during that time period.
Okay, and then you also have a recommendation with regard to the index that we tie to.
I do.
Okay.
Currently, the council's salary in the current ordinance is linked, at least in 1 year, it was linked to the increase granted to the employee base of the city. I think that, as I note in my report to you, can have some odd impacts on decision-making, or it may not, but it could. I would recommend, if you're going to link your compensation to an index, that you use the same index that's used by the state's Office of Management and Budget that they use to set the salary cap number, which is essentially the CPI for all urban consumers.
So you're saying there's more integrity in the indexing that way because it's not tied to what happens with the staff?
That is what I'm saying. I'm
Adjustments,
saying
okay.
that because that index is outside of your purview, it's a more transparent index, and it is what it is every year.
Thanks.
The
Member Brindle?
The resolution that is here does not include the indexing, right?
It does not include, so we
Okay,
would need to
so-
amend that if that's what you'd like to include.
All right, well, I would like to move ordinance 2012-20 and include that indexing in this, where we would link future pay increases to a neutral third-party index, such as, I don't know if you want to
I would-
identify the indexing.
I would
Okay.
recommend including that.
So let's
specifically.
just use that sentence.
Use the consumer price index.
What it says
7%.
here is, such as the index produced each year by the Minnesota Office of Management and Budget.
I think it's a good idea to specifically reference that because there are many different CPIs. They use a specific CPI and they also hone it for our region of the country.
So it'd be utilizing the CPI produced each year by the Minnesota Office of Management and Budget.
Which indexes annual increases to the state's public employee salary cap.
I'll
And-
second that.
Okay.
And we would propose that adjustment be annually, because that's when that happens.
Yeah.
It generally will happen, they'll make their adjustment in November, December for the upcoming January.
When you- Go ahead,
I'm
Member
sorry,
Bennett.
but to be clear, no raise takes effect without a vote in an even, no raise takes effect without an election in between the vote and the raise taking effect, correct? And that is why the January 2015 date is as soon as this can take effect.
That's correct.
So that indexing would be automatic for 1 year, but then there would need to be a vote again in order to.
I thought you asked that question before, and I thought the answer was no.
I thought the answer was yes. I think by
vote again.
Roger?
The way, the reason you're using the index, if you chose to use it, is that it puts it out, takes it out of your control.
Right.
What you can't do, why this has to be done the way you're doing it now, 2015,
We'd have to change the ordinance.
is because you cannot raise your salaries until effective after the next election.
Yes.
But when you add an index, you are not raising your salaries. It's already built into the ordinance and it's automatic.
Right,
And
so
it-
they'd
it's
have
had
to
a
change.
public- And it's had a public process and was
Yes.
adopted in a public way.
You'd have to go through the process again if you wanted to go off the index.
Yes.
Okay.
We didn't have Roger with us at retreat, so
Right.
this was the question I had at
Mhm.
retreat,
No,
but
I
didn't have the
remember that.
answer.
I don't remember the pay increase on January 1, 2008, but
That was built into the ordinance that you
Okay.
adopted in 2006 that took effect in January 2007, and then a second increase in January 2008, on the order of what's being discussed this evening, but then none since then.
It wasn't very much. It might have been easy to not remember
Yeah.
that.
It was pennies.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know in '06, we went to kind of the middle of the pack, and I don't remember what the percentage increase was. But the consequence of not doing indexing, really, it
Well, and we actually
it
didn't.
exacerbates the problem that you face, because now we would suggest going to the middle of the pack again, and I'm having the worst time with it, because.
Well, actually, last time we didn't go to the middle of the pack, we went to the low part of the mid
Did
of
we?
the pack, which is why,
So it doesn't, it sounds like it makes sense, but the percentage is consequential.
well, since you just heard during our business meeting that we've had 35 hours more of meetings, not counting the 5 to 7 meeting that we have before every council meeting this year, I don't think you have to really worry about justifying this, Mayor. You work really hard I know you all do. And let's not have any more angst over it. Let's just vote on it and move on.
And it takes effect when?
January 1st, 2015.
Other
This is
question?
roll call? Is this,
It's an ordinance.
okay.
Are we proposing to waive second at this?
Mary,
at
if
this-
that's if that's amenable to you, my second would support that.
We can waive second reading.
Thank you.
Member Sprague?
Aye.
Member Swenson?
Aye.
Member Bennett?
Aye.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye.
Now it's time to get out your calendars.
Okay.
The 6th and 7th don't work for me. The 11th does, and the 20th would, I think, for the annual dinner meeting.
The only one that doesn't work for me is the 7th.
I note that Monday, March 11th is a school board meeting, and Kathy Sella, who presently serves on the park board, also serves on the school board. She is their person on their representative on the park board. That being said, the 7th and the 11th are the best days for me.
So it sounds like the 11th.
11th works for the two of you. Okay. I'll set that for the 11th, the annual dinner.
I may have to cut out early. I have to coach hockey that night out on the pond.
Okay.
But I'll be there for most of that, so.
You don't need a motion on this, do you?
No, we just need those
Yeah.
3 dates.
All right, then go to the next
Next
item,
one.
the annual volunteer recognition reception. How do those dates look for people?
They're all okay for me.
'22, 29. Yeah. They look good for me. Everybody else too?
Josh?
22nd. Hockey practice.
How about the
I mean,
30th?
The 30th. No hockey practice.
Oh, no hockey practice. Should we go with no hockey practice?
Where are you be practicing indoors, I take it?
No, outdoors at Strachauer Park.
On April 22nd?
No.
Oh, maybe that's, you know what? I have a reminder that has no end date. That's what it is. Yeah, you're right. I'll be swimming. I
I
do
hope
swimming in the
you're,
pool.
I
You'll
hope
be
you're wrong
swimming,
about
but-
that one.
Good point, Mayor.
That same ice rink.
Yeah, so any of those work for me.
Okay. Do we have a preference, anybody, over a Monday versus a Tuesday night?
Monday seems to be a good night for those events.
Okay.
And maybe the 22nd.
It's Earth Day.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
We're golden. Decided by Earth Day. And that again is at Braemar?
Yep, looks like it.
Okay.
Okay. Next is the resolution 2012.
Excuse me, Your Honor?
No.
Oh, excuse me. Advisory dates for interviewing applicants. Excuse me. Okay, back to the calendar. Thursday, February 6th, Monday, February 11th, Wednesday, February 20th. How many, do we have any sense of how many we have?
Your Honor, it's Thursday, February 7th.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, you got a problem.
February 7th. Okay, let's see here. February 7th. I got a noon issue. That's it. February
Mayor and
11th.
Council, in 2012, I believe we interviewed 32 candidates, which is why I chose 3 nights that would allow you that latitude.
February 11 work for people?
Yep.
And February 20th. That works for me. I just have daytime activity.
So we went 7, 11, 20?
Yep.
Starting at 5:30.
Okay.
But the last one you said would be scheduled at 7:30? The 20th, correct? Okay.
That would be the latest. Okay. Now, we're on I, Resolution 2012-180, accepting various donations.
So moved.
Second?
A motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor of adopting the resolution accepting donations on behalf of the city, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Donations this reporting period are to the Edina Arts Center and the Edina Park Department, which got a very nice donation from the Kilo Dale Garden Club for $2,175 for buckthorn control. And then the Edina Police Department. The donors' names will be on the website. Next, we have a proposed policy for pedestrians and cyclists safety fund. And Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. We've been talking about this proposed policy for some time now, and it's finally reached its way to you. I drafted an early draft of this, shared it with city staff who are involved in transportation functions, and presented it also to the Transportation Commission, and their comments were included in the recommendation to you tonight. I'd be interested to know if this is acceptable to the council, and if it is, we should adopt it. If it's not, you could give me some feedback, and I can try to redraft it and bring it back to you. We'd like to have something put into place relatively soon, so that when the new year comes, we can begin to use the policy to guide some of the decision-making around future sidewalk and cyclist improvements that we'll be using the new utility franchise fees.
All right, good, thank you. Member Sprague.
Thank you, Mayor. Missing from this is an item that we discussed earlier, right-of-way improvements that might go along with the sidewalks. So is there a way that we could add that into the policy?
Yeah, Councilmember Sprague and members of the council, yes. I think that is a good idea to include kind of right-of-way repair, right-of-way maintenance, post-projects into the list of allowable expenses. That's a good idea. I would recommend that.
So right-of-way maintenance and improvements.
Maintenance?
Well,
right away, yeah.
What I'm interpreting that to mean is the repair of right-of-way post project. So if we're doing a project that's associated with these dollars, we're going to put in a new sidewalk, and we're going to mess up the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the curb, and take out somebody's hosses and take out somebody's fence, or whatever that happens to be, that the repair of that right-of-way would be part of the eligible expense of this project.
Yeah.
Well, we don't pay to replace anything, but we just put sod back in the right of way when we take out landscaping. So I'm thinking of the landscaping that takes place in conjunction with the sidewalk along the boulevard, which for the most part will be turf. But
So what about right-of-way improvements, as you said, that word you used, and subsequent preservation?
I don't want to get into preservation, do we? We've tried to avoid that on all our other road reconstruction. Why would we be into preservation?
On the right-of-way? I mean, you want to make sure that it's improved to accommodate the
We talked about
non-motorized
urban
activity.
design going in conjunction with the engineering, and this would be for some of those elements. I mean, basically, it'd be for the boulevard landscape improvements that may go with a sidewalk. If we don't mention it, then I feel like we're gonna have to fund it from a different source, even though it's relevant to the project, related to the project improvement on the concrete.
I would agree with that. What I was trying to articulate is right-of-way improvement, right-of-way vegetation improvements that are related to a project, not improvements that are unrelated to a project.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything else?
It could
That
be-
wasn't the easiest work, so good effort, I'd say. Member Bennett.
Well, two concerns. First of all, I think we could, for maintenance, specify what that includes, and I understand in transportation circles, there are the 4 Rs of repair, replacement, rehabilitation, and reconstruction.
Sure.
And that might be, might have a level of specificity that's informational to people. And then another question is the name, which I know we have visited, and others may have a strong preference for this. I know that Member Brindle and I attended something called an active living workshop in the fall of 2010, and that seems to be a term like living streets and like complete streets that has a definition nationally and internationally as well, something in our community. And safety, which is in the current title, has a meaning as well, but I think there's been less level of agreement in our community as to what that means. And that's why I would favor maybe using active living instead of a safety fund. But I defer to my colleagues.
Thoughts on that? I thought upstairs in our meeting, we addressed the use of this word safety. Was it?
That was in a work
different
plan, though.
context,
That
yeah.
wasn't in this more formal.
I guess the concern is if you use the term safety, you have to provide data to justify the improvement. And I'm looking at this more from a 10,000-foot level. Safety is one of the underlying motives for going to living streets, providing safe travel for all modes. So I think that's implicit in the strategic endeavor. And I don't think it undermines it necessarily to include that in the title, because that is part of what living streets, it's a main driver of living streets, is safe travel for all modes, in addition to encouraging travel in all modes as well, which is the active living part. So it's kind of, yours addresses one side and the safety addresses the other. So
I think there's a perception that with safety in the title, we're solving something. And so I've been thinking about it since it was mentioned earlier as to whether safety does bring about a thought that something is wrong that needs to be fixed, or whether it is something that sets forth a safe haven, if you will, for pedestrians and cyclists. So I could go either way on it, but I do like the thought that active living is front and center, why this is important.
I don't have a strong
I
preference.
have strong preference.
Yeah.
I just want clarity.
and think about the average person who might look at this title, and what would connote, what would be clearer, active living or bike and pedestrian safety, to the average citizen looking at it.
That's why I'm saying clarity is important.
So to me, I could see how bike and pedestrian safety would be clearer than they might not know what active transportation is.
Unless you define it early on.
Well, that was what that workshop was so helpful for. I think actually, Mayor, that you attended with Member Brindle the second session of the two when I was out of town.
You're right.
But there were folks from the school district there. Safe Routes to School is part of that. Also, folks from engineering, staff from the school district, as well as people working as volunteers with the school district. And it was a great workshop. And this, I think our focus on living streets and the work that we've done, a lot of the work that we've done in the last couple of years has come out of that. The real chief takeaway from that workshop was the best ways to get people to move in a community are to provide the facilities and then have those facilities connect places in the community that people want to go, like schools and parks, et cetera. So that is where the active living philosophy is going nationwide.
On the other hand, too, that title would jibe with the new policy being drafted, which is Living Streets.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a common moniker.
Mm-hmm.
So Active Living Infrastructure Fund is one name.
No. I think I go back to what the mayor said in clarity. And if we start talking about an active living infrastructure fund, I think that's confusing because not everyone knows what we're talking about. And when we set this up, we set it up for pedestrian and cyclist safety. So I think the two words pedestrian and cyclist need to be in here. I think to make it very clear why we started collecting these monies.
Can we go with the language as is and then look at this downstream again? If we
And we're
decide
gonna-
that we get further down the line and people are getting educated in active living, we can do something about it then.
That'd be fine.
Brand it differently.
Yeah.
One question regarding usage, is it MUTCD instead of MNUTCD? I've normally seen it without the N.
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
Minnesota Manual of Uniform, so it's MNMUTCD.
Okay.
Because that's
I
one
just,
that
I have
Minnesota
not seen it
adopts, yeah.
printed that way, I've just seen it, but thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the policy with the addition of right-of-way vegetation
I'll second
improvements.
it.
And we'll clarify the 4 Rs
Yeah.
part
Great,
too.
thank you.
However you want to word right-of-way vegetation improvements.
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. And now we're down to correspondence petitions. Anything for us, Manager Neal, or
No, Your Honor.
other than what we have on the dais?
No.
All right, or we've received through our packets, and we've got some minutes that were provided to us. Council comments. Member Sprague.
Oh, I'm up. Let me get out my notebook. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to express my gratitude again to Director Keprios and also to the police department. It's great to see their camaraderie and to see them show up for this award, this Distinguished Service Award. And I know that, as with many employees, they go above and beyond the call of duty. So thank you for all that you do. I got a phone call in our community comment. Someone talked about the redevelopment at 62 and Shady Oak Road, and I saw that Director Houle was walking back in towards the tail end. And the concern is that the traffic has not been analyzed as to how it will regionally impact cities like Edina, the additional traffic load on Crosstown. So I don't know if that's something that you have an opinion on, or that can be evaluated, or that would be worth evaluating, but I'd appreciate your comments on that.
I kind of missed out what was the
So
question?
there's a new development.
Oh, the United Healthcare, yeah.
The new United Healthcare Campus
Yep.
south of Crosstown.
I'd have to do more research with the city of Eden Prairie and look at their traffic information to get back to you, then actually talk with MnDOT on if they have anything on it.
I guess we
From
might just.
past personal experience, I can tell you, I spent 8 years of my life working on the AUAR for that project that's now under
okay.
construction. And regional transportation travel patterns were analyzed to a very great detail by both the city and MnDOT, and also by United Healthcare. And to say that the region isn't preparing for this is really not true. In fact, Southwest LRT, we're investing, our state is investing a huge amount of money into providing rail to that site, which was a really key aspect of the transportation in and out of that particular site for the future, and which includes a station site at the future UHG headquarters.
So you're not concerned about capacity issues on Crosstown?
No.
Okay.
I used to be, but not anymore. Not for Edina.
That's all I got. Thanks.
All right, Member Swenson.
I'm good.
Member Bennett.
I was struck with the statement earlier this evening about the number of hours, and just want to express my gratitude to everybody who's working so hard. I think staff and directors and facility directors and council members and city manager and assistant city manager. I think we've put in a lot of time this year to try to do a lot of good work.
Thank you. Member Brindle.
Just to give you an update on what's happening with Southwest Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, we are meeting on pretty much a monthly basis, and we'll get back together in January. There is an action plan that the group is responsible to complete. Takes on average about 18 months. We've got a schedule that brings us, I think, into 2014 to finish it. That doesn't mean that we aren't getting calls for things. We are indeed, as a new Yellow Ribbon chapter, getting calls for help with veterans who are living in their cars. That was the first call we got, that a woman needed. She was showing up to the Southdale YMCA, and she showed up there to take a shower. And so we connected her with the network that helps to provide housing for veterans. And she now has a place to live, and she has a SNAP card so that she can buy food. And then the most recent one is when there's an estate and that estate has an executor, sometimes there are furniture and furnishings, materials that become available, and one of the places these families go to donate their furniture now is Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. And so they match up what is donated with veterans in their homes who need that. So we've recently connected a veteran in St. Paul who's been sleeping on a box spring with no mattress, with a hospital bed, because it was recommended he have one. And this was available from an estate in Wayzata. So it's interesting that we are definitely, well, that's our third call, and we have been established for 7 months. And so it's definitely, we look at the resolution and how much time is there. Well, it's a lot of time. It's my time at this point. But that's not to say that staff is not making themselves available. Jeff Ilasky makes himself available from the police department. And we've got several staff members making themselves available to help with employment, consultation, and a variety of things. But Yellow Ribbon is definitely making a difference.
Great. Okay. Good. Thanks.
Oh, and happy holidays to everybody, and safe travels.
Thank you. And I see you wore your holiday sweater.
This is my ugly sweater, which isn't ugly at all, actually. But I got a kick out of the ugly sweater store at Southdale. So.
I thought our public hearings on the 11th, where we consolidated all those street reconstruction hearings, went pretty well.
Good.
And then on the 12th of December, I was speaker down at this Lambda Alpha land use organization on kind of helping set a iconic Southdale for the next century. So I just talked about what we'd done with respect to Southdale and the role we had there. It was a good group of land use professionals. And then Monday morning was the Metropolitan Business Plan Regional Economic Development Conference, where about 200 people showed up at Target, and for an update on the business plan activities with Greater MSP and Minskew and the new Commissioner of Transportation, Charlie Zelli. I'll tell you what it all boils down to in my mind is we need to be setting the plate for success through building really sound infrastructure. When I use the term infrastructure, I mean our educational system, our transportation system, our transit system, transportation being roads, bridges, our broadband infrastructure. All of these things are vital to the regional economic success that we want to all have for our region and for our town. And we're going to be talking about this relative to our community fairly soon too, as we develop our own little economic development strategy. And then Monday night I went down to the Edina Public Schools. They had a legislative forum and listened to the new legislators that will be sworn in discussing educational policy and strategy there. So that's it for me. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of things. One, there's been a change of schedule for the MLC breakfast for our region. I don't remember the old. Is it going to be at Braemar? It's still going to be at Braemar, but the new date is February 8th. I can't remember what the old date was, but February 8th at 7:30 a.m. is the new date. The old date conflicted with a Twin West Chamber event, so.
So it's February?
It was the 1st.
It was the 1st.
And
okay.
now it's the 8th.
Now it's February 8th.
It's at when?
7:30 at Braemar.
Why so late?
7:30 a.m. at Braemar. Sorry.
Why so late?
Yeah. I don't set these, but that's the time. Just a quick one on City Hall hours. Christmas Eve, the city currently has half-day holidays on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. And as it happens this year, both of those days fall on a Monday. And so we were faced with the decision or the situation of having City Hall open, or excuse me, closed Saturday, Sunday, open half a day on Monday and closed on Tuesday. And that seemed to be, there's a better way to work that. And so what we're planning to do is to close City Hall on the Monday and close City Hall on the Tuesday. And but instead of just giving employees an extra 4 hours of vacation time, I'm asking them to do one of two things. They can either come in and use that, if they want to use that 4 hours of time, they can come in and use that 4 hours of time to clean up or to file or to do other sort of work activities, or they can take that time off with paid leave. So we've offered that option, and so that's how we're going to have the building on the 4 hours on those 2 days. And various employee groups have been able to kind of work with their customers to let them know that. So we haven't expended any additional money. In fact, we'll save some money by not having to have all of our energy keeping the building hot those days. The final item for me is just to let you know that the West Arena ice is back up. It's going to be hosting the Edina Eden Prairie boys hockey game on Thursday night. And the boys have occupied the new locker room. The girls will occupy their locker room sometime later this week. And we'll never get them out of those locker rooms from here on out, I'm sure. Because they're very, very nice. Good. And they're very happy with them. And that's all I have for you.
Good. All right. That prompt anything else? Otherwise, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.